Hello and welcome to today's video. Thanks for joining me. My name is Elle of Elsewhere and I do video reviews of books, video games, TV shows, and movies. This is my second review on YouTube, and if you're a returning viewer, thanks for your patience. I'm going to be putting out more content, but I do work a full-time job throughout the week, and I want to make sure that I make the best quality that I can. So the format is a little bit different today. I'm standing. I did get a new standing desk, which has completely changed my life. Before, I was on this like skinny little console table with like hardly any room for my monitor or my tower, speakers, mic, any of that stuff. So been revolutionary. If you're new here, I'm glad to see you. It's great to have you here. Why not see about subscribing? So buckle in, everybody. This is going to be a long one. So this is a video review for Mirrorland by Carole Johnstone. I thought it was Carole Johnstone, but that's just because I'm American, I guess. I had to look it up just to be sure, and it is in fact Carole Johnstone. So the front of the book says, "Dark and devious, beautifully written and plotted with a watchmaker's precision." Stephen King. The back jacket of the book says, "Kat lives in Los Angeles, far from 36 Westerick Road, the imposing Gothic house in Edinburgh, where she and her estranged twin sister, Elle, grew up. As girls, they invented Mirrorland, a dark, imaginary place under the pantry stairs, full of pirates, witches, and clowns. These days, Kat rarely thinks about their childhood home or the fact that Elle now lives there with her husband, Ross. But when Elle mysteriously disappears after going out on her sailboat, Kat is forced to return to 36 Westerick Road, which hasn't changed in 20 years. The grand old house is still full of shadowy corners, and at every turn, Kat finds herself stumbling on long-held secrets and terrifying ghosts from the past. Because someone, Elle, has left Kat clues, a treasure hunt that leads back to Mirrorland, where the truth lies waiting." The book takes place in Scotland as well. As a consequence, if I mispronounce anything, I'm gonna do my best. If there's like a Scottish accent thing, like a couple of times, like the granddad says some stuff in like a really Scottish way, I'm sorry if I butcher it. That's not at all my intent. Just a little disclaimer before we begin. But before we continue, I would like to just give a quick shout out to 5G's Emporium, which I've spoken about on the channel before. So Carole Johnstone really likes Stephen King a lot. She says in the acknowledgments that she really admires him, that he was her writer's crush, and it's easy to see why somebody would want to get inspiration from Stephen King. I mean, he's a master, right? Matter of fact, my friend Jeremy of the 5G's Emporium that we spoke about in my last video, so he made a cup for me that I just had to share with everybody. This is from an actual book that I tore some pages out, which I felt weird to be defiling a Stephen King book, especially my favorite one, The Stand. But he wanted to incorporate any photos that might be there, any significant pages to me. I thought this one was really cool. It says February 1975 to December 1988. To me, The Stand is kind of his like magnum opus, and it could just be because it's my favorite of his, but the way that Jeremy burned the edges of the book is incredible. Yeah, so who doesn't love Stephen King? Initially I thought, oh well, that's kind of ridiculous, like who paid Stephen King, because my opinions varied between the first time I read this book and then the second time. The first time, my initial reaction to the front of the book was, who paid Stephen King to write that, you know? But upon the second read, I don't know, I changed my mind. So that was just a little something before we got started proper, so let's go ahead and do that. We begin at the prologue. It is September 5th, 1998. We meet the main character, Catriona. It's called Kat for most of the book, and her twin sister Elise, who is called Elle for most of the book. No relation. They seem to have run from their home to a warehouse near a harbor. They seem to be wanting a ship to take them away. They know things about the sky that sailors know. Their grandfather taught it to them because he used to be a sailor. I'm obsessed with the way that she describes scenery, characters. I wish I could be half as good. You really feel like you're in the scene with these characters because she just has a way of putting you there, and I admire it so much. I really do. Kat pulls out her mother's powder compact and starts applying some to her sister's cheeks. An old man that Kat calls an old salty dog, smelling of rum, shines a flashlight in their faces and asks what they're doing there. Then he sees that Kat's jumper is covered with blood and runs off to get help, telling them not to go anywhere. They both seem to be injured. They ditch the jumper in the sea. She smiled, smiled, smiled. We will not leave each other. Say it. Footsteps crunching toward us. Another louder curse. Enough lights to blind us so that we could no longer see the Firth at all. Only each other. We will not leave each other, I whispered. She gripped my hand even tighter, and I swallowed, watching her smile get sharper, darker, watched it disappear. Never so long as we live. The old salty dog went and found help, who then arrives. Kat lets us know that that was the day that their second life began. So, Part 1, Chapter 1. Kat is in Terminal 4 of JFK Airport watching news reports. Ross had called and left her some voicemails, and she says that it was always his voice she heard before his word. It seems that Elle went missing at the same harbor where we began the book. There's a photograph of Ross looking distraught there. Kat has 2 glasses of wine and orders a third, so this is like the first allusion that we get to, Kat likes to partake in libation. The waiter sees the pictures with the words, "Is Elise McCauley alive or dead?" on her laptop, and she tells him that it's her twin sister. "Sorry, ma'am," he says with a megawatt smile, managing to sound like he's never been sorry a day in his life. The constant smiling and mamming wears me out, makes me feel irrationally furious. That is the only thing about America that I won't miss. It makes me feel more tired and more pissed off. And as somebody who's worked in retail customer service jobs for, oh my God, almost half my life. And so I've had to put on a facade, where it's like the customer's always right, so you have to, yes, of course. Let me just take the shit and the abuse, but if they don't do this in other parts of the world, then can we just make that a thing over there? Can we adopt that, please? And thank you. The Coast Guard of the area, James Patton, is on the screen, and he is all but saying there's no way that Elle is alive. Kat thinks he's an arsehole. I want to go to Scotland. A picture of Elle and Ross looking happy fills the screen. It makes Kat feel barfy. I pick up my phone, check the weather app. Edinburgh is still the second location after Venice Beach. I've never dwelled too long upon why. 6 degrees and heavy rain. I look out the window at the dark, the long white lines of runway lights. So that just makes me wonder, did Kat look up anything to do with Edinburgh on her phone at any time? Because that might be why the weather app is showing Edinburgh. Did she ever have a phone, the same cell service when she was over living in Scotland? Did she set up an account anytime in Edinburgh? So it's like, I'm not very good at technology, okay? I'm kind of awful at it, but this is a little bit baffling even to me. Phones aren't magic, okay? That's all I wanted to say. She comes across a picture of Ross looking agonized over Elle being missing, and it makes her slam her laptop closed. She's also stressing out because she doesn't want to go back to Scotland. Kat believes wholeheartedly that her sister's not dead. So, Chapter 2. Kat arrives back at her childhood home, 36 Westrick Road. Everything looks the same from the outside. She has this weird feeling like somebody's watching her. I turn back to number 36, open the gate, walk the path, climb the 4 stone steps, and there is the red metal boot scrape. The last step, the huge red front door. It's ajar. I once asked Mom why it wasn't called the Red House, and she blinked, gave me the stupid girl look that is sometimes all I can remember now when I think of her. It's the Mirror House, just like you and Elise, just like Mirrorland. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Actually, that's a Mandela effect, and the phrase is magic mirror on the wall. Kat sees upon her first step into the entrance hall of the house that everything appears to be the same as it was when she was a child. She imagines the door slamming shut behind her and locking. Clearly she has suffered some sort of trauma here. There is also a part of her that is very happy to be back here and to see that so much is left unchanged. Ross comes in, sees her, and drops some china. A dish? We're not sure. She is looking too intently at his face and the way it has changed over the years. She seems to be very familiar with Ross. Maybe that's why I don't step away from his embrace, why I let him put his arms around me and pull me so tight against him that I could feel the scratch of his stubble against my neck, the warmth of his breath against my skin, the vibration of his voice, familiar and forgotten, utterly unchanged. Thank God you've come back, Kat. Seems like an inappropriate way to hug your sister's husband. She starts to head toward the room she shared with Elle in her childhood, and Ross informs her that it's now his room with Elle. She goes to bedroom 2, which she calls the Clown Cafe. She reminisces about the last time she spoke with Ross. He told her after she had been in California for a few years that he and Elle had bought their old house. I flinch at her name. I can't help it. And Ross looks at me carefully, holds my gaze too long. "You never asked me why," he says. "Back then, why we bought this place." I turn away from him, look towards the window and that painted-over cupboard door. It came up for auction. Elle saw the notice in the paper. He sits heavily down on the bed. I thought it was unhealthy to dwell on the past. I mean, you know what I mean. And I do. I was happy here, mostly, and I've been so unhappy since. But I still know it's true. You can never go back. I got the deposit together and helped her buy it. He shrugs. "You know what Elle was like when she wanted something." My face heats, my skin prickles. He's talking about her in the past tense, I realize. I wonder if it's because he thinks she's dead or because she and I don't have any kind of a present anymore. He clears his throat, reaches into his pocket. "I figured while you were here you'd need these, so that you can come and go when you want." He holds out 2 Yale keys. "This is for the hallway door, but I usually leave it unlocked. And this is the night latch for the front door. There's a deadlock, too, but there's only 1 key, so I'll stop locking it." Which is a little bit of foreshadowing. There's only 1 key to the deadlock, so just remember that. So now we know that Kat and Ross must have some sort of history, so it feels like it's already going in a weird direction from almost the jump. Ross starts ranting about how Elle is a good sailor and that he had told her many times not to go sailing alone. Kat has a flashback of when she was a child, when she and Elle were on the Satisfaction. Satisfaction is a fictional pirate ship that the girls sailed when they were kids. Ross tells her he was away at a psychopharmacology conference in London when Elle went missing and blames himself. He says that he believes the police are going to stop looking for Elle soon. He calls himself the Wailing Widower. She tells him that he should get some rest because he must be tired. He immediately starts to protest. "I can't sleep until tonight anyway," I say. "If anything happens, I'll wake you up, okay? I promise." His shoulders sag. His smile is so wretched I have to look away from it. I look out instead at the green, windy sway of the orchard beyond the window. "Okay," he says, reaching out to squeeze my hand once. "Thank you." At the door, he briefly turns back, his smile more like his own. "I meant what I said, you know. I'm really glad you're back." "Please don't touch my hand. You are my sister's husband." Kat looks around the Clown Cafe. It was Elle's invention alone. It was supposed to be a 50s era American diner. So, I know a lot of Americans' roots are from Scotland, so maybe that's, fascinating or something. But, are Americans actually really that influential on a world stage? I don't know how I feel about it. With Elvis blaring out of the jukebox. The Clown Cafe is where the girls would hide from the Tooth Fairy because the Tooth Fairy was afraid of clowns. I swallow. I haven't thought about the Clown Cafe in years. I haven't thought about us in years. Suddenly desperate to breathe fresh air, I go to the window, pull up hard on the bottom sash. When it doesn't budge, I look down. There are maybe a dozen long, crooked nails hammered into the sill through the window frame, and there's no reason for that to scare me, but it does. It scares me as much as that split second in L.A. when I thought Elle might actually be dead, or that part of me that's glad I'm here, and this place where my first life ended and was never ever supposed to restart. "Oh, Elle," I whisper, pressing my fingers against the cold glass. "What the fuck have you done?" Chapter 3. Kat is looking from the landing at the top of the stairs at the bedroom's closed doors and is reflecting at the names of each. She can't remember if bedroom 3 had a name, but she remembers that she was always forbidden from going inside, so she doesn't do it in the present either. Her grandfather worked in a shop that was much like an office. He called it the donk shop. I need to grow up. A donk is a type of engine. According to the internet, a donk is an auxiliary engine on a sailing craft which does propel the vessel, and it's still sometimes informally known as the donk. I love that I've learned something of donks. Her mother's room was called the Princess Tower. Her mother had lots of fluffy pink pillows and frilly pink trim in her room, though it is very much at odds with what she remembers about her mother's stern personality. She was from one of Mom's favorite bedtime stories, a fairy princess called Iona, because it meant beautiful, and she was the most beautiful princess in the world. I sit down on the bed, look out of the big window towards Westerick Road, remember the slow, soothing warmth of Mom's palm against my hair. One terrible day, the fairy princess was stolen from her mother by an evil hag. The hag cut off her wings and imprisoned her in a tower so high that no one even knew she was there. But the princess was never sad or afraid, because she knew that one day she would escape. One day, Her golden hair would grow long enough that she could tie it to her bedpost and use it as a rope to climb all the way down to the bottom. "But how will she untie her hair?" Elle asked once, and Mom stopped stroking ours. "She'll cut it off." So that's foreshadowing for later, and I'm not going to get into why, but it's more significant after you've read it before. Escape is a major theme in this book, if not the theme of the book. It gives us insight into the twins' mother. She escapes through fairy tales because she can't physically escape the reality that she's in, which the book will get more into. But she's also transferring all this to her daughters, whether she realizes it or not. So she also cautions them that they must stay together and trust only one another. Looking at her has always been like looking in a mirror, of course. "Twins run in our family," Mom said, "but we were different. Special. Rare, like owlet nightjars or California condors. More than 100,000 other children have to be born before a mom gets to have children as special as you." She had a book with complicated diagrams, curled up fetuses holding hands inside the womb. The egg that made us split late, more than a week after fertilization, and that meant we were more than just two halves of the same whole. We were mirror twins. Mom would dress us in identical clothes, childish homemade pinafores and white high-necked blouses, gingham dresses that reached long past our knees. She would sit us on her pink stool, stare with bright eyes at our reflections inside the dressing table mirror as she twisted our long blonde hair into pigtails. A few days later, and you would have been fused together into someone else, like sand and limestone into glass. The idea had frightened me, as if we had only narrowly escaped becoming a monster. Which, oh my god, the writing there was absolutely masterful. It's just brilliant. I don't have anything snarky to say. Just awesome. There was a falling out between Elle and Kat before Kat left for California. Elle told her that she hated her and wanted nothing more than for her to leave. Kat knew better because I guess psychic twin powers, which sounds both dope as hell and really scary actually. She remembers when she was a child and had the flu. She felt her sister fall out of old Fred, the tree. She could feel the agony of the sprain as if she had fallen herself. Elle said that she felt the symptoms of her sister's flu and that was why she fell, so... No, I don't want psychic twin powers. I can see Mum turning away from the range, the skin around her eyes pinched like dried wet newspapers, soup splattering onto the floor from her ladle. Her voice high so Grandpa could hear her. "Someone gets stabbed in Edinburgh 3 times a day. Elle and me, maybe 8, 9, no more, because Mum's hair is still mostly fair, nearly blonde like ours, looking at Grandpa with wide, alarmed eyes until he grins, flashing white teeth. Poor bastard, eh?" So it seems like here we get the idea that the mother isn't keenest on the grandfather, perhaps. Otherwise I'm not sure why that line's in there. We discover that Grandpa is a taciturn man who was like a caricature in Mum's stories, a hard life forged into a hardened man. He traveled the world because he did not have friends or other family, it seems, because it's mentioned that his world doesn't expand beyond the members of his household. Oh boy, and here's the first example of something that he says that's really Scottish, and it's almost like a different language. I'm sorry. I love the way Scottish people talk. I butcher it. I try, but I can't do it right. So I'm sorry for what I'm about to read. Worry gives wee things big shadows, hen. Just chuck it in the fucking bucket. I can't. But anyways, I love the fuck it bucket thing. That's really great. Like, are you anxious about the fact that you just said a Scottish phrase really badly? Just chuck it in the fucking bucket. She muses about why Elle might have wanted to buy the house, because Elle was the one who was the less sentimental of the two of them. She also feels that the house is a preserved tragedy, a museum. I retrieve the dustpan and brush Ross has left on the floor, sweep up all the broken china I can find. As I'm crossing the kitchen to the scullery, I come to an abrupt halt close to the kitchener. I stare down at the long join between 2 tiles, its grout cracked, stained dark. My heart skips a beat. I feel suddenly sick, look quickly away. A bell rings, loud and sudden and close. My heart skips another beat, and then starts to gallop. I turn around, stomach squeezing, fingers and toes tingling, and my eyes go straight to the wooden bellboard just inside the kitchen door. These numbers correspond to different bells which have different tones. Their mother plays a game with them in which the girls have to guess which bell pull has been pulled based on the tone. Girls grow quickly bored with it, but their mother is always happy when they guess correctly. The doorbell rings after Kat has another spooky moment the way she did when she first came into the house. She goes to see who it is, but they're already gone. My toes touch against something smooth and cool. An envelope sitting on the Hessian doormat. Catriona in black block capitals across the front. No stamp or postmark. I'm reluctant to pick it up, but of course I do. My fingers are clumsy as I tear through the envelope, pull out the card inside. It's a sympathy card. A narrow-necked vase spilling with creamy lilies and tied with a bow. A debossed gold cursive font. Thinking of you. I go back into the hallway and close the door. Snib the lock. Open the card. Leave. First of all, whoever this is using her full government first name. So, Chapter 4. Detective Inspector Kate Rafik is sitting in the dining room, which Kat refers to as the throne room. Kat isn't sure why they are in that room, except that it feels like an interrogation room. Ross is in the kitchen. There's a cop with DI Kate named Logan, and Kat thinks he was introduced as a DS. I looked that up, and it's a detective sergeant, which is someone who's sent to process a crime scene. They're also responsible for management of staffing within the police force. She thinks that his hair looks goofy, and he looks like an overpaid footballer. Based. Kat thinks that Elle sent the envelope to her, telling her to leave, and is peeved at her. She doesn't care if everyone believes Elle to be dead. She knows that she isn't. Kat is being passive-aggressive, which of course the DI picks up on. Kat asks her what she does for a living, and the interrogation really begins. LA's a long way from Leeds. You mind me asking what prompted you to leave Scotland in the first place? I shift forwards in my seat. What does any of that, have to do with Elle going missing? Another flash of neat teeth. I'm just trying to get a picture of Elle in my head, that's all. Every wee bit of information helps, and it seems strange to me that identical twins would live so far apart. In the last 12 years, how often have you come back? I haven't. Ross says that you and Elle had a falling out just before you left. We just stopped being close. People do. And then I left. That's it. So there was no specific reason behind the move, or the staying away. A pause. For 12 years. I fight against the urge to stand up. It would give her too many wrong ideas. I got sick of Edinburgh and I left. I stayed sick of it, so I didn't come back. That's it. She leaves a silence that I too quickly fall into. Are you trying to suggest I've got something to do with this shitstorm? Kat seems outraged by it. Kate picks up on this and says to her, oh, so you think your sister's dead? Then Ross comes in and contradicts her. Oh, basically saying like, Kat said that she knows Elle's not dead. So Kat confirms that that's how she feels. Logan, the DS, the detective sergeant, he seems to come to life and he smiles. Kat finds his teeth and dimples good looking. Okay. D.I. Kate has Logan recap everything as things stand now with Kat and Ross. He basically says that she was going to Anstruther for lunch after leaving Granton Harbor, to which she of course never returned. The weather was taking a turn for the worse about 6 hours after the alarm was raised for her and the search had begun. The temperature of the water was too cold for a person to survive in if there was trouble with the boat, or if she fell in accidentally due to the storm. You told Logan that Elle had been depressed and distant before she went missing, that right? I sit up straighter, shooting Ross a glance that he doesn't see because his eyes are closed. That you were having trouble as a couple. I didn't say that, Ross snaps. I was working away a lot. He shakes his head. I was working a lot. Elle and we hardly saw each other. When she wasn't painting, she was out on that damn boat. I have a lot of feelings about that, because it seems like Kat is hyper-focused on Ross and his reaction, but maybe not for the right reasons. That's still pretty murky at this point in the book. And now we have the first real acknowledgement that perhaps things aren't, or maybe weren't, picture perfect in their marriage as it appeared on the surface. They also ask more about Elle's mental health leading up to her disappearance, essentially leading to the conclusion that perhaps she left to take her own life. Remember, Ross is someone who works with depressed people for a living, so he knows what it looks like. We learn that Elle had an attempt at the age of 19 with an overdose. Kat scoffs at this, believing this to be something like a cry for help. Kat shows them the envelope that she got, and Kat lets her know that Elle had been receiving dozens of them up until her disappearance. D.I. Kate lets them know that the police will run forensics on them just like they did with the others, but she doesn't believe at this time that they're threatening or maybe not even connected. There's another person in there with the DI and the DS, Rafik and Logan respectively. Shauna is there with them. Shauna is your family liaison officer, Catriona. She'll keep you updated with any new development. Meantime, Logan here is your first single point of contact. And get in touch with the missing people folk again, Ross. Elle's entry still hasn't gone live. You've still got all the other helpline numbers, eh? I don't need a counselor, Ross says. I just need my wife. Rafik gets up close to him and still manages to look him in the eye, even though he must be close to a foot taller. We'll find her, Ross. And I've watched enough crappy cop shows to know they're pretty much never supposed to say that. D.I. Kate then has Kat follow her out to the yard away from Ross and asks if she thinks Ross might have had something to do with it. She confirms that his alibi is solid, but she still has a hunch about him. Kat reiterates that she believes that it's Elle doing all this, that Elle is not dead. After the police leave, Kat whispers to herself that perhaps Elle could not undo what she had done. begun, that perhaps she doesn't know how to come back. Chapter 5. Kat goes downstairs feeling fully creeped out by the house. She sees a note from Ross on the kitchen table. He couldn't sleep and went for a walk, and lets Kat know that she should help herself to whatever she wants. She smashes down some cornflakes and pictures her mother and grandfather there, deciding that she misses them that day. She has an eviction notice from her condo, and she feels like she doesn't have anywhere to go now. She blames Elle for everything and only Elle. She sees that she has another email that is titled, "Don't tell anyone." The email says, "He knows." I push my chair away from the table, and then I'm standing at the window looking out at the apple trees swaying in the breeze, their big branches and heavy leaves moving, restless. I look down at the sill and the half-dozen nails that have been hammered into it, just like in the Clown Cafe. My fingers bump over them, back and forth until it starts to hurt, because I don't know why they're there. I can't think of any good reason at all. And even though I'm inside a swath of trapped and glass-warm sun, I'm cold enough that my teeth chatter, that I can feel goosebumps through the sleeves of my shirt. The beep of a new message makes me jump. I step back into the shadows of the kitchen, eye the laptop screen with distrust. John.Smith 120594 again. No subject line this time, just one sentence. Clue 1, where our treasure hunts always started. I close my eyes. Elle. Of course it is. So the email does seem to be from Elle. I mean, at this point, we don't have any information that would cause us to believe otherwise. Nails and windowsills. I mean, once again, like, who's keeping who in? She goes to look at the back garden, remembering when she and her sister would go stomping through there, stirring up the birds. She goes into the garden, which has a new shed that she doesn't recognize. She goes to stand in front of old Fred, where their treasure hunts had always begun. She finds that the carving of her name and Elle's name is still there inside a circle. Carved beneath the circle is the word big. She finds a shoebox buried in the earth and opens it. I see the empty bottle first, a pirate grinning at me, standing with one foot on a barrel, one hand on his cutlass. Captain Morgan's Spice Gold rum. Next to it are unopened tins of food, careful neat stacks of them. Tomatoes, baked beans, sweet corn. Immediately I think of Mum supervising the 6-monthly restocking of the survival packs stored under our bed. Black canvas rucksacks stuffed with non-perishable food and bottles of water. I think of her forcing us to run through the house on endless fire drills, intruder drills, nuclear war drills, refueling our panic, that ever-present hum of doom. 12 November 1993, age equals 7 plus a bit. There's a monster in our house at night. Not every night, but lots of them. He has a blue beard and is so very frightful and ugly that all ladies should hide from him and never venture to go in his company. That's what Mum says. It's from a book. She says Bluebeard and Blackbeard are brothers. She said Bluebeard lives on land and Blackbeard lives on sea, and Bluebeard is worse, but I'm more scared of Blackbeard because he's a pirate and Bluebeard is just a man. This is foreshadowing. I didn't put the pieces together this far into the first reading. It's just important that you put a pin in that mentioning of Bluebeard and Blackbeard. Then she runs out of the garden and back into the kitchen to look at the bellboard, first at number 3. Pictures her mother telling her that if she ever goes into that room that she will have her guts for garters. That's Bluebeard's room. He roams the house at night looking for more wives because the bodies of his wives are hung on hooks in this room. Elle and Kat hid from Bluebeard only in Mirrorland without exception. They could hide from most things in the house in the Clown Cafe, but Mirrorland was the only place that was safe from Bluebeard. She goes to the pantry and to the large cupboard within it, the interior of which has been covered in wallpaper. There is a door behind the paper, the entrance to Mirrorland. It is a land of high fantasy, of adventure. It leads out of the house and into the alleyway. Their mother showed it to the girls, and it always felt to them that they were entering another world. The girls used to go there a lot at night together. Now that Kat is older, she is cognizant of the fact that her fantasies are not actually real, and that this is not a different world she has entered, but she can't help but be rattled by the fact that so much of her past seems to have remained intact, which is reflected by the house. I turned back to look at the bricked-up door. The larger part of Mirrorland, stretching along the alleyway from the bottom of the stairs to that door, was once Boomtown, a dusty boardwalk of fruit crates and wooden planks 6 or more feet across, staging a post office and a marshal's office, furnished with cardboard box counters and tables, seats of cushions and blankets and pillows. The Three-Fingered Joe Saloon was in the southwest corner against the boundary wall. In the northwest was a cluster of Lakota Sioux teepees and a training area delineated by sticks laid end to end in a square. Later, Boomtown became a prison. The Three-Fingered Joe Saloon, a rather less exotic recreational day room, the wooden crates, the doors and walls of Cell Block 5, and us, its prisoners, the Shank. In its heyday, Elle used to make me sit beside her for hours, fashioning the bloody things out of sharpened toothbrushes and Grandpa's old razor blades. That seems pretty dangerous. It's like, who's supervising these kids if they're making actual shanks? She walks around a large armoire and a pram, which is, a baby stroller for us Americans out there, to the wash house, which we learn is the most important part of Mirrorland. It is here that the satisfaction is kept. Bowsprit? Jib. Forecastle, for sale. I whisper the words under my breath as I walk over them. Main deck and gun deck. L's black scrawls of rum and water stores. Here. Magazine here. I walk from one end of the wash house to the other. Crew's quarters, cargo hold, mainsail, crow's nest, navigation room, captain's quarters, stern. A moss-covered hose is coiled around 2 taps, its nozzle still set to spray, lying inside the old butler sink. I look at the Jolly Roger above it, its painted skull and crossbones stretched flat, fixed to the stone with a black electrical tape. And then I look across at that little window, porthole through which we bathed in moonlight and navigated by the stars. Because while Boomtown and the Shank were only for the day, the Satisfaction was mostly for the night. Not everything is the same, though. Their treasures are not there anymore, but the wheel of the ship is where it always was, which makes her smile. The Satisfaction was their first invention in Mirrorland, and it makes her miss Elle terribly. The twins' mother told a really dark tale about a poison taster who was the eldest sister of the queen. I think this would give me nightmares as a child. Every day, the heroic poison taster would take the first bite or sip of the king's food or drink, and every night she would swallow a pearl touched by all the king's subjects, and all of their murderous thoughts and plans and words would sink black and boiling into her flesh and bones, where they would fester and rot and burn. And although her life was full of pain and suffering and poor reward, her king's was not, and that was enough to sustain her, to every day set her to task. To Mum, this meant that the eldest must always look after the youngest, but to Elle, it meant that she was in charge. She had the divine right to always go first. Yeah, in a lot of ways, being the eldest means having to be the most looked upon. So the pressure is definitely there, but there is a desire to look after the younger ones. I mean, whether or not we do it all the time. Plus, we're really bossy. The eldest children are usually really bossy. We think we know everything, because we got to it first. Kat pushed to be in charge of someone for once, so they made up a crew. There were always different members, with the exception of 3. Annie, who was named for the pirate Anne Bonny from the 1700s, and who was an actual pirate of the Caribbean. Belle, who was fearless and also a major babe. And Mouse, who was basically little more than a servant, and who gets the brunt of Elle's and Kat's moods. Always Blackbeard stayed on our trail, and always we waited for Captain Henry to appear over that next horizon, to come to our aid and save the day. We always knew that he would. We absolutely knew that one day he'd come back for us. I open my eyes, blink, walk back across the deck of the Satisfaction, out the wash house door, and back into the long, narrow alleyway as if in a dream. I stop suddenly, turn to face the boundary wall. A shiver runs through me as I press my numb fingers against its rough stone. A big portrait of Captain Henry, painted by Elle, had once hung somewhere along it, stern and unsmiling, the blues and yellows and greens of the island behind him. I think of that empty rum bottle in the shoebox. Captain Henry had been our hero, the bravest and best of all pirates, the pirate king of the world. And this seems to suggest that Captain Henry could be a father insert for these girls, because we don't know anything about their father at this point. And Kat's ready to leave Mirrorland back here in the present again. So she goes to leave, but she looks up without knowing exactly why. She sees a white card taped to the roof. Snow White said, "We will not leave each other." Rose Red answered, "Never so long as we live." All pirates needed to have a code, Mum said, and that was ours. And although it was as much a part of Mirrorland as everything else down here, something sets it apart. This card is new. She remembers the email that said "he knows" and feels creeped out, and hears a voice that is somehow familiar screaming at her to run. I do. I grab hold of the banister and start to climb, hands clammy, heartbeat erratic. The dark and freezing expanse of the alleyway behind me like a chasing monster, a roaring, building wave thick with seaweed and chitinous bones. The stairs are too steep. My knuckles scrape against stone. The hackles on the back of my neck send shudders down my spine, and those slices of daylight through the wooden roof are like cracks of lightning over my head. Deadlights, I think. They're deadlights. Deadlights. At first, I didn't appreciate that. In the first reading, I was like, oh, that's just too derivative, right? Later in the text, we're going to find out that actually the deadlights thing is kind of genius in the way she uses it. Just put a pin in that, too. Kat is absolutely certain that Elle is still alive. She knows Elle is sending her emails and has made the cards. She believes this is going to be, like one of the treasure chests that they had when they were kids, so she decides she's going to wait for the next clue. Chapter 6. Their mother told them that all men are pirates and are never to be trusted. Kat is dreaming about herself and Elle running through their made-up Kakadu jungle. Kakadu? I don't know. Being chased by deadlights. Kat had fallen asleep on the couch and screamed herself awake. She sees Ross hovering over her, and he has her right arm in his grip. She uses jet lag as an excuse for screaming in her sleep. Kat puts on Elle's coat, and we learned that they abandoned anything they had shared after they left their childhood home. Do twins have the ability to share dreams? Because Kat claims that they do. Can anybody tell me that in the comment? Can anybody confirm or deny? Because I'm definitely not a twin, so I would really love to know that, actually. It's fascinating. I don't think I want twin dreams either, though, to be fair. She goes out the front gate and sees a man in a heavy coat out there staring at her. It freaks her out, and she mentions deadlights again. This now feels like deadlight overkill, though. The guy heads out, and she heads in the opposite direction. She heads toward a shop and picks up some things. A woman exclaims at her in French. Kat realizes that this lady probably thinks that she's Elle. Okay, there's a little bit of French in here, so if I butcher that, then, once again, I'm really going to try to do my best, okay? I'm not trying to be insulting. I'm Marie Bernard, and you are Catriona, Kat, from America. Her long fingers reach for mine and squeeze. Her smile is too bright. Elise told me all about you, of course. I find the thought that Elle told her anything about me, of course, a lot more disconcerting than maybe I should. She smiles again, but I can see that her eyes are tired, red-rimmed. I think of the shouted relief in her, Dieu merci, you look so like her. She leans closer. I smell Chanel No. 5, and then she shakes herself, steps back. You're friends with Elle? Oui. Something flashes dark in her eyes before it's gone. We both are. This is Anna. Anna is the cashier in the shop. She, Marie, and Elle are friends who would sit in the back and drink when business was slow. Kat is kind of taken aback because Elle would usually meet people through her when they were younger. Marie asks about Ross, and I think that might be what makes Kat want to leave the shop. Marie tells her that she is welcome to come visit her in her home if she would like, and to let her know if there's any news of Elle. Then she leaves the shop. Do you want a bag? Anna says. Her expression is stony again, and when I nod, she snatches one from under the counter and tosses it at me. Ooh, bitch. Begins scanning and discarding my shopping with brutal efficiency. I clear my throat. Are you all right? She thrusts a bottle of wine at me without looking up, although her cheeks have flushed pink. I don't understand why you're here. I'm sorry? Elle told us what happened between you. Her eyes flare defiant again. Why you left. I can only imagine what she said. Elle can twist truth into the kind of knot that will never be undone. What happened between us is none of your business. Anna visibly swallows, squares her shoulders. You should leave. She wouldn't want you here. Kat pays and leaves the shop. Anna calls after her to be careful. Kat goes back to the house. She has a new email from the same user as before. The subject line is, he knows. It's a clue, prompting her to where Grandpa's first mate Irvine died. Irvine died on the sea. Grandpa and Irvine were on a fishing trip around a place called Devil's Hole. Devil's Hole. Grandpa and Irvine were on a fishing trip around a place called Devil's Hole. The net caught on the bottom of the hole and tipped the boat. Grandpa's leg snapped in two, but he threw Irvine a net hook and tried to save him. That accident did at least provide some funds for Grandpa to retire and pay off the house. She goes to one of the cupboards and finds Elle's drawing of the Devil's Hole, along with 2 pieces of the paper she has been collecting. She then has a memory of the witch, who says, you're a disgusting wee bitch. Ross is in the doorway of the kitchen and asks what she's doing. She finishes making them dinner. I don't know when Ross came in. I don't think I missed his arrival. I don't know if it was written about. Anyway, then they eat. The bottom drawer of the old fridge freezer used to be crammed full of M&S sausage rolls with, for my funeral, do not touch, printed on these big ugly labels, I say, trying to ease the tension. Grandpa called them his fancy horse doovers. I think of his easy, quick grin. Good spread at a funeral's rare as rockin' horse shite these days, hen. When I turn around, Ross's frown is sharp, his eyes angry, and then his face relaxes, goes blank, so quickly that I shiver, wondering if I imagined it. Are you okay, Ross? I'm almost relieved when that ugly sneer returns. Why wouldn't I be okay, Kat? I'm sorry. Of course you're okay. I didn't mean... Shit. I'm sorry. Ignore me. He rubs a hand over his eyes, gives me a wan smile. I'm just knackered. Really fucking knackered. She asks about Anna, and Ross basically says that Anna can be short with people. When she mentions Marie, he gets all weird and says he doesn't know her. Sure thing, I believe you. Thousands wouldn't. And here's where I'm bringing something new to the channel. So hopefully if you saw my last video, you saw that I had a red flag counter on the screen. Now I have actual red flags. So this is going to be the first red flag for Ross. When she mentions Marie, he gets all weird and says he doesn't know her. She calls him on that, but his back is turned to her when he reiterates that he doesn't know Marie. Kat ignores this red flag and reasons that Elle just never told Ross about Marie because Elle likes secrets. I didn't know Elle was depressed, I finally say to break the silence. Ross turns around. I'm a fucking clinical psychologist, he says, and there's no longer any anger in him, just a palpable exhaustion. I see a dozen clients every day who have chronic depression, bipolar, PTSD. He sits heavily back down, rests his head in his hands, and I couldn't even help my own wife. So not to get too personal, but just to talk a little bit about me. I was diagnosed with type 2 bipolar 4 years ago. It was later in life. And, usually the word bipolar would like trigger me, and sometimes maybe a little bit still. But I guess one thing I just wanted to say is, like, if you know somebody that is struggling with their mental health, there's something called anosognosia, in which they might not know exactly how sick they are and that they need help. And so it's best to just have these conversations with your loved ones if you feel that they might have a mental health disorder of any kind, and definitely just be sure you're kind and not stigmatizing them or calling them crazy or asking what's wrong with them. Those are the best ways you can help people, because they're not going to be able to get help until they're ready to get help. Just support them the best that you can. Anyway, Ross basically lets her know that he lied to the police about Elle's depression being a mild one, so it's going to be the second red flag. So now we have 2. Kat wants to make Ross feel better because I guess to her, his emotions are more important than common sense. She wants to tell him about the cards that she's been finding on her treasure hunt, but remembering the email's words stop her. Don't tell anyone. Why are all the windows nailed shut? He blinks, looks at the windowsill. We assumed the McDonald's did it for security. I mean, they were ancient. His smile lasts little more than a second. I got a restorations guy around after we moved in who told us we'd have to replace every bottom frame. Would have cost thousands. This time his smile is bitter. I didn't mind them too much, to be honest. Thought they would help keep Elle safe when I wasn't here. So that's another. Now we have 3 red flags. He demands to know why Kat is so certain that Elle is dead, and she replies that she would have felt it. He gets very mad and starts ranting at her. He tells her that Elle used to say that denial was Kat's superpower. I agree. Ross storms out and goes to bed. Kat reads the first card at the kitchen table. January 10th, 1995 equals 8 plus a half. Mom says at night, Bluebeard hunts for another wife to lock up and hang on a hook when he gets angry. Bluebeard is a coward of the tallest order. She says when we are on the Satisfaction looking for Captain Henry and the island, we have to behave and not fight, or Blackbeard will get us. Because Blackbeard is the worst pirate of all. He's sly and mean, and all he does is lie. All he wants to do is catch us and trick us and throw us to the sharks, but he never does. She's just trying to scare us, Ross says. It's also foreshadowing, and you'll see. Chapter 7. Kat reads the second note. August 23rd, 1995 equals 9 plus 2 months. Nearly! It's good when it's just me and Kat, but I like it when Ross is there too, even though we have to play the things he wants like spaghetti westerns. Today we were deputies in Boomtown, holding off the Oklahombres. Not how you spell it, I don't think. We had to defend the town on our own because Marshal Hank was in Deadwood and we didn't know when he was coming back. I hid behind the wall of the Three-Finger Joe Saloon and had a Colt 45. Ross banned the clowns from playing. He's not scared of clowns like Mum or Kat, but he doesn't like them much. Belle and Mouse got shot in the crossfire because Ross says they can't shoot for shit. We're sharpshooters like Annie. I'm better than Kat though. Mum always says there's no such thing as a good Prince Charming like in Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty. But if there's pirates and princesses and fairies and clowns and mermaids and poison tasters and Mirrorland, there must be good Prince Charmings too. Today Ross held my hand for nearly 10 minutes and smiled at me when he climbed back out of Mirrorland when we had to go in for tea. I didn't tell Kat. So it turns out that Ross was their next door neighbor when they were 7 years old. They kept their friendship with him secret because they weren't supposed to associate with boys. So on Saturday mornings, Ross would jump down the wash house window from his bedroom and open the skylight to gain access to Mirrorland. Kat remembers the first time she and Elle met Ross. Elle told him a lot about the two of them, and Kat got jealous of their relationship from that moment. They played with the cowboys that day and shot their slingshots. Their mother encouraged them to learn how to protect themselves from bad men. Once target practice had ended, she went to the largest teepee to sulk. Afterwards, I slunk off to hide inside the biggest teepee, a precarious frame of old scaffolding poles under a sheet. Chief Red Cloud, sitting cross-legged in breechcloths and feather war bonnet, barely spared me a glance. The Lakota Sioux taught us how to make war clubs and tomahawks out of gardening tools and feathers, or how to defend ourselves with blocks and strikes, holds and rolls, but never on days when they'd seen us hanging out with the cowboys. I wonder why. Belle, Annie, and Mouse, the crew of the Satisfaction, are all there as well. Belle is super cool and interesting, beautiful and badass. She is who Kat wishes to become. Annie is indifferent to Kat's plight. She seems to be a projection of their mother's personality on an imaginary person, intimidating, sometimes frightening, but strong-willed. Mouse, however, is kind to her and tells her that it will be all right and that she loves her. Mouse is the personification of their confusion about life, who absorbs their secrets and fears. She's the punching bag. She tries to dress in a way that imitates them, but wears a black sack dress that has lines drawn on it, and it's a poor imitation of their own dresses. Ross comes into the teepee. Of course, he doesn't see the crew in there with her, since he didn't know of the lore of Mirrorland just yet. Kat seems satisfied that he had left Elle behind. When Ross leaves, he cautions them not to tell their mom about him and says he will return the following week. We return back to the present, where Kat realizes she's just dissociated back into the past. She ponders why Elle is doing all of this, sending her on this search through the past. She believes it is to have some measure of control over what is happening, since that is how she was when they were younger. Again, older kids we're bossy. She opens the email and begins typing. Who is this? My sister is missing. If you don't tell me who you are now, I'm going to the police. The beep of an answer comes so quickly it makes me jump. Don't. This time I reply with no hesitation at all. What do you want? I know things. Things you've made yourself forget. Things he doesn't want you to know. Don't tell the police. Don't tell anyone. You're in danger. I can help you. Fuck off, Elle. I know it's you. You need to stop. You need to come back. Stop it and come back. She's fuming at the table until she hears a noise in the hallway. There's nothing there, but there is a sound that sounds like low crying coming from the drawing room. Oh, don't love this. Don't love this next part at all. This is where the book started to sour for me. She finds him looking at his and Elle's wedding album and getting sloshed on whiskey. He offers it to her, and she has a tumbler of it as well. She wants to comfort him, but doesn't. It gives her an old familiar ache, and it makes her sad. She's pissed at Elle for making Ross sad. I just don't... He's still crying hard, wiping his cheeks with the heels of his hands. I'm just so scared, Kat. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to go on without her. I don't know if I can go on with... Hey, don't talk like that. Don't ever talk like that, okay? Which... There's another one. So now we have 4. So you're suicide baiting your presumed dead wife's twin sister that you haven't seen, that her twin hasn't seen in 12 years. Aren't you supposed to be a clinical psychologist? Then she's back to her memory of her childhood, when it was just the two of them in the teepee. Ross remarked that he hated his mother. She left his father while he was at work and moved them next door to the twins. He cried on Kat's shoulder while saying he hated his mother. I can't blame Kat for missing that particular red flag, because she was basically just a fetus back then. However, 31-year-old Kat is a stupid, sentimental idiot who seems head over heels for Ross, despite not seeing him for the same amount that she saw her sister, and... she's mad at her sister that's missing for marrying Ross, but not mad at Ross for marrying her sister, which is wild to me. She doesn't believe that Elle would want Ross to suffer because Elle also loves Ross. Ross apologizes for his rude behavior in the kitchen earlier that evening. Ross, stop. I kneel down next to him in the photo album, cup his face in both of my hands. His eyes are worse than bloodshot, no longer white at all. His cheeks are rough with stubble, wet and red raw. I wipe them gently with the cool palms of my hands, my fingers, and he closes his eyes, goes limp. I think of his crooked smiles, the excited twist of my stomach whenever he dropped down from that skylight and into our world. And I do it without thinking, even though I know I was planning on doing it all along. Even before I felt that old, indulgent ache, I leaned closer and pressed my lips against his. So yeah, like you pretty much have the inkling that she has feelings for Ross, but this is where it explicitly becomes a thing, which is where I just... Oh, I knew we were going to bad places. I knew. I mean, this the first bad place. Here we are. Anyway, he kisses her back. She lets us know that his mouth is hot and wet. And I did not need to know that. My boyfriend said, like a garbage can in the summer. Which is hilarious. She says that she can feel the thunder of her heartbeat even in her toes. Oh, what a weirdo. Ross breaks the kiss and runs out of the room, and then Kat remembers that she should have some shame about herself in this moment. And now we have confirmation that they have a history as well, because she sees on his face that things aren't the same for him as they used to be. Chapter 8. The latest email is in with the newest clue. Draw a clown to warn the tooth fairy. Kat is hungover and irritated. She barfs in the bathroom, which she thought was where the clue was. There's nothing there. No round clown face painted carefully in Elle's acrylics. It was the only warning we ever gave the tooth fairy whenever she was on the prowl. A little clown face in the corner of a mirror that we hoped would frighten her back into hiding before we had to resort to painting our faces and putting on our wigs and noses and jumpsuits in the clown cafe. Because everything is terrified of something. And for the tooth fairy, it wasn't just clowns. It was the very idea of them. Once she opens the mirror, she finds a bottle of Prozac and a bottle of Valium. The paper is underneath them. Before she reads it, she frets about how she's fallen back into feeling for Ross so easily. Then she starts to wonder about the motivations behind Elle wanting her to find the pills. Seems like another red flag. So, this is the fifth one now. November 30th, 1996 equals 10 plus 1/2 in 1 month! Kat's not speaking to me, but I don't care. It's not my fault. Mom says even pirates have to have rules. We're allowed to give someone the black spot if we want. And anyway, it was Ross's idea / fault. He told me it would be fun, and it was till Kat started to cry. I tried to stop him. I felt bad, so I helped her, even though I'm not supposed to. I used our secret pirate code, which is only supposed to be used in dire emergencies. I'm not writing it here just in case. I know you want to know it, but tough luck! Only me and Kat know it, and that's the way it's going to stay. But she didn't care anyway, and she didn't say thank you. She just cried. I think she's just mad because Ross said my painting of Dad was brilliant. She's always jealous and then pretends she isn't. She's just mad because she knows Ross likes me better than her, even though we look the same. Sometimes I hate Kat. So yeah, clearly they have a very complicated relationship. She thinks about the portrait of Captain Henry that Elle painted back then. Their mother described him to her so that she could get his likeness for it. It's a life-size painting. The girls truly believed that one day their father would come back from his life on the sea and take them away to the island. They were wrong about this, though. They would pray at night, even though there was no pressure for them to do so from anyone else in the house. Then one day, Elle decided that they wouldn't be doing that any longer because God isn't real. Kat was cool with it because she didn't care if the prayers worked. She just liked the ritual of doing it. Even so, she opposed it because of the way that Ross and Elle had been against her around that time period. She remembers a day when the witch was at the table in the kitchen and asked her, "What are you doing, you little horror?" Horror. You little horror. Jesus, gotta really enunciate that. Kat trudged down to Mirrorland to face judgment for having opposed Elle on the God issue. The Satisfaction's crew, a clown named Pogo, and old Joe Johnstone, the barkeep of the Three-Fingered Joe Saloon, are all there, and so is Ross. Everyone votes that she be punished, with the exception of Mouse, who votes that she should receive forgiveness. Kat is presented with a black spot. We had never used the black spot before. Its possibility was an ever-present threat, but until then, that's all it had been. It meant expulsion from Mirrorland, permanent exile. I couldn't believe that my going against Elle on this one thing, a thing I barely cared about, deserved such awfulness. I was horrified, paralyzed with shock. "Take it," Elle said. And so I did, holding it between thumb and forefinger as if it burned. "We've decided you should be given one last chance to survive," Elle said, but that gleam told me I wouldn't like it. "You've 1 minute to find a hiding place inside Mirrorland, but it has to be a good one. If we find you before 1 hour is up, you have to leave Mirrorland and you'll never get to come back, okay?" So this shows that the two of them, Elle and Ross, were excluding Kat for a long time. She runs toward Boomtown to try and find a hiding place. She frets too long. She has to settle for a spot behind some old sofa cushions. Mouse finds her there. Kat is afraid, but Mouse says that she will save her. Mouse also says that Ross is mean. Then Kat also whispers back that Ross is mean. Mouse is making Cat uneasy because she is smiling too much. She offers to trade places with her. Then Cat sees how much Mouse has tried to imitate hers and Elle's dresses and hair. She seems excited by Cat's predicament. The dark was nearly suffocating. Please, please, I thought, squeezing my eyes shut. Please don't let them find me. Please. Because what would I do without Mirrorland? Without Ross, Annie, Belle, and Mouse? The pirates, the cowboys, the Indians, and the clowns? What would I do without Captain Henry? What would I do without Elle? I would be alone. I would be stuck inside a cold, gray, empty, frightening world. An hour is an eternity if you spent it hiding in a box, waiting for the very worst to happen. When the adrenaline started to wear off, it was replaced with a kind of weary, doomed acceptance that returned as quickly to horror when I heard loud footsteps on the saloon's floor. I heard the bony thud of knees, the shuffle of someone moving closer, opening the lid. It was Elle. Please don't tell, I whispered. Please don't make me leave Mirrorland and never come back. Please. Obviously, Cat feels traumatized by the idea of not being able to return to Mirrorland because it often feels like a safe space for them both. Elle has no desire to actually kick Cat out of Mirrorland. Kick Cat. Kick Cat. But Cat believes that she wants it and Ross to herself. Elle has her swear to their code. We will not leave each other, she whispered. Come on, say it. I swallowed, let go of her wrist. We will not leave each other. She nodded. Never so long as we live. Every pirate code was in code, and ours meant trust me, and no one else. It seems like Elle is just showing her sisterly love, really. Cat is a little bit floored by the fact that the journal entry said that the black spot was Ross's idea and not Elle's. She thought Elle was just being cruel. She's also not sure that she believes it even now, so I'm gonna say that's number 6. We already have a lot of red flags on Ross. Just so many. Kat decides to add a tracer to her next email to Elle. She calls D.S. Logan to ask him if he has ever considered that Elle might have sent herself the cards. He replies that they never did. She types up the email. It reads, if you're in trouble, please just tell me. Please. I'll believe you. Chapter 9. Kat heads to the harbor where her sister disappeared, where they began their second life. I hear the startled, shit, before I see the owner of it, a young man hunkered down against the pier wall. He's looking at me, one hand clutching at the lapel of his very obviously not waterproof jacket. His second shit lacks the shock of the first, and of course, I realize what's happening. Again. I know. He gets up with a grimace that suggests he's been there for a while. You're Kat, Elle's twin sister. I'm Sathvik Brijesh. I'm sorry if I butchered that too. Vic. He reveals that he knew Elle through an art exhibition that showcased both of their works. They both chat about Elle for a bit. He also believes that Elle is dead, just like everybody else, except for her. She tries to explain that she is getting emails from Elle, but Vic doesn't believe her. They exchange phone numbers. She was terrified of him. I turn my head so fast, my hair whips against my face, stinging my skin. What? Vic's eyes are wet, and he's looking everywhere but at me. She was terrified. In the last few months, she changed. His voice is lower, harder. She'd lost weight. She wasn't sleeping. She had bruises. Who is him? Kat, maybe you should... Who? But of course, I already know what he's going to say before he says it. I watch the up and down bob of his Adam's apple as he swallows. When he finally looks at me, his expression is as sorrowful as it is certain. Her husband. Kat heads back to the house on Westrick Road, determined to ignore the red flags everyone is waving in her face. She doesn't believe Ross would ever hurt Elle. There is a card waiting for Kat when she arrives. It says, "You'll die too." She screams at whoever left it to fuck off. Kat is having a bad dream. The witch is dragging her down a dark hallway while Belle and Mouse try to pull her back to Mirrorland. Elle comes to choke out the witch, and then Kat wakes up. She goes downstairs to see D.S. Logan, D.I. Rafik, and another woman beside the kitchen table. Ross is pacing and pulling his hair. Kat meets Shauna Murray, the family liaison officer. The police have to officially call off the search for Elle, which upsets Ross greatly. Kat tells D.I. Kate Rafik about the card she received that day. The D.I. takes the card with her as evidence. Logan pulls Kat to the side and asks if she is okay. She entertains the idea of leaning back against his chest. He tells her that on the afternoon her sister disappeared, there was a suspicious person loitering around. He tells her that if she sees anyone else skulking about, to notify him immediately. Shauna is talking to Ross about memorial arrangements, and it annoys him and Kat. Kat walks her out and tells her that Elle isn't dead and shuts the door in her face. Chapter 10. There are 2 emails. The first one contains the 4th clue. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. The second reads, I'm not in trouble, but you are. She finds the diary page and a copy of A Tale of Two Cities. October 12th, 1997. 11 years, 3 months, 12 days. Mom is always making us read or reading to us. She never stops. But at least now they're not baby stories or Shakespeare. Yuck! Now they're much more exciting, about wars and spies and murder. We just finished Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, which is a stupid name, but the book is the best. It's about a guy named Andy Dufresne who's in prison for murder, but he didn't do it, and he spends the next 27 years planning his escape. It's brilliant! He has to use this tiny hammer to tunnel through 4 feet of concrete, and then he has to crawl through a pipe full of shit for 500 yards. Immense/insane! The bit at the very end when his friend Red gets let out and he realizes Andy has left him money and has set up a new life for him too is even more brilliant. It made me cry, which was so embarrassing, but I don't care because I love it. I love my mom too. I love Kat. Sometimes, when she's not being a bitch. Kat is annoyed with Elle's treasure hunt and resolves not to return to her old life in this house. The tracer email returns. The location of the address is in Edinburgh, the very same city as the house. Ross and Kat go to visit Grandpa and Mom's graves. She asks him why he hated Grandpa so much, and he just says it doesn't matter. There are flowers on her mother's grave. They were her favorite kind, pink gerberas. She is very disturbed by this. The girls claim to everyone that they were runaways, so they were sent to the Rosemount care home. Elle withdrew and would rant about their future and how much she missed Mirrorland. Kat missed Ross more than anything else. When they were younger, Ross asked Kat to tell him about the island. It's called Santa Catalina, and it's in the Caribbean, and it's amazing. It's got beaches and lagoons and mangroves and palm trees. Captain Henry's going to take us there because it's his favorite place in the world. He built a fort there and a huge house, and the islanders have named streets and villages and even a big rock after him because they love him so much. And Ross gave me that same sharp, dark look. Why doesn't he come back and do it then? Your dad. Why doesn't he take you there? I don't know. I stopped smiling. I stopped feeling glad. Mom said he will come back one day. His eyes became even fiercer than before, the silver flecks inside them flashing, and I was suddenly afraid of him, of his anger, of what he was going to say. His lips turned thin, mean. Don't believe her. People lie, Kat. They lie all the time. Ross is mean, remember? Back in the present, Ross takes Kat's hand and tells her he needs her to let him know about any more cards because he wants to present a united front to the police. So how many is this now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. 7 red flags, Kat. He tells her that the reason he kissed her back wasn't because she reminded him of Elle. This does not make her feel any better. Ross is an ass. There's another card waiting for her which reads, "He will hurt you too," in bright red. She doesn't tell him what it says. She thinks back to their 19th birthday when Elle was in the hospital and seemed to be sneering at her in victory. Chapter 11. The 5th clue has come in, where the clowns hide. There is a lantern under the floor in the clown cafe which she is staying in. It looks identical to the lantern on the stern of the Satisfaction. Taped to it is the next diary entry. February 16th, 2004. Kat doesn't get it. She doesn't even try to get it. It's like she doesn't want to. She's an idiot. She thinks if she pretends something hasn't happened, then it hasn't happened. But if you forget something, you might forget everything. And that's just dumb. That's what makes you an idiot. Sometimes I hate her for it. Sometimes I wish I didn't have a sister at all. Sometimes I wish she would just disappear. Kat starts going through the rest of the clown cafe, finally arriving at the dress-up cupboard. She finds the next diary page. August 10th, 1998. Something's coming. Something's nearly here. Sometimes I'm so scared I forget how to breathe. I forget that I can. The bells scare me all the time. It's what comes after the bells, really, I know, but it's the bells I think about the most. Sometimes I think I hear them when I don't. Sometimes I dream them and wake up with my hand on the door handle to run, or shaking Kat hard enough to make her teeth chatter. Sometimes I wake up downstairs, and those times scare me the most. What if one night the deadlights find me before I wake up? Once I woke up on the main deck of the Satisfaction. The wind was too loud, and the port tacking sails were flapping like sheets hanging out to dry in the garden. And I know it was because I was trying to look for Dad. Because why does he never come back when he always does? When all the bad ones always do. More often now. All the time. She sends an email demanding that Elle tells her what's going on. The response is that I'm not Elle. Elle is dead. She asks, who the fuck are you? And the reply is, I'm Mouse. Ross invites her out and she gets all gussied up. Like, little black dress and everything. Red nails. Seduction. Ross's friend brings them to a romantically set table. Ross tells Kat that she looks great. I hate this. Everyone seems to come to the table to wait on them and seemingly scrutinize them. She decides that they've done nothing wrong, so they shouldn't have any reason to feel guilty. Kat is annoyed that Elle seems to have co-opted Mouse for her own games. Mouse was Kat's creation, the one she could always feel superior to. She wishes that she could take away Ross's pain. She asks him if he remembers the shank, and he says of course. He says that he barely remembers the Rosemount and says that they had been there 6 years by the time he saw them again. She saw him on the street and he came to stand with her. He asked where she had been, but she didn't tell him because of the pact that she and Elle had made to only trust each other and to cast aside everything from their old lives. She hugged him. Elle came up and backed away when she saw him. She told Kat that they needed to leave. Kat told him where they were staying and suggested that he come to visit. Elle was very upset about this because the vow was that they only trust one another. Kat asks Ross if he believes that Elle is dead, and he says that he does. He asks if she has any idea why Elle would have disappeared on purpose, since she's so sure that, Elle isn't dead. Christ, he says, shaking his head. I know your mom did a number on you, but what? She was textbook delusional disorder. Paranoid, grandiose, persecutory. She filled your heads with shit weird enough to confuse anyone, never mind 2 kids. Told you over and over that you were special, different, that you couldn't function without each other until it was true. No wonder you had such a fucked up relationship. So, now he's out here diagnosing a dead woman. So... Number 8. Ross wants to try to steer her into a better conversation, and she agrees to try. Chapter 12. She met up with Ross 4 months after their initial meeting all those years later. They got all horny for each other, and they made out. Back in the present, they get back from the restaurant. They have drinks. He asks her how she's been. She does not answer, but says she has to go to the loo. Thank you, United Kingdom. Kat reflects on how she and Ross saw each other for months behind Elle's back, and how Elle was probably depressed or sick at the time. She asks if he misses Mirrorland. He answers that he had the best times of his life there and that he was sorry when it was gone, which is not a yes or no. It's kind of just a non-answer. She starts... Oh, God. She starts feeling on his crotch and he tells her to stop, but she kisses him. Then he gives in. He makes a sound... loud and almost distressed. Is this rape? They start going at it like animals biting and shit. So they have sex. I hate this. She wakes up with Ross in the bed of the clown cafe with her. She asks him if he regrets having sex, and he says no. The doorbell rings. She thinks about all the bells in the cupboard. The twins were in college and Kat was still seeing Ross. The Rosemount would be empty for the May Day holiday barbecue, so Kat and Ross decided to go there and do the deed. He got off while moaning her name at the very instant that Elle comes in and sees them. He got off while moaning her name at the very instant Elle came in. Kat was ashamed of this. In the present, Ross comes back from checking the door, saying there wasn't anyone there. He tells Kat that he thinks that Elle was having an affair when she disappeared. Elle was having an affair, he says to the stripes on the wall. I think she was having an affair. Why? There are twin blurry pulses of pain inside my temples. I lied about us being okay. We weren't getting on. We were barely speaking for a long time. He shrugs his shoulders. She had another phone. And I can't help it. I think of those 2 words, capitalized in a subject heading, splashed bloody across the naked stone wall alongside the wash house. He knows. I press my fingers against my temples. Did you know who it was? Ross shrugs. Maybe, I don't know. There was this guy she sometimes talked about, another artist, and I could just tell, I mentioned him to Rafik, but Elle never told me his name. He shakes his head. Big red flag, right? You betcha. She either jerks him off or they have sex again. It's not explicitly stated, so just take your pick. Chapter 13. Kat wonders what it's like to be anywhere else with anyone else than with Ross. Gross. Get a life. Kat goes to the shop that she went to previously, and Anna is the only cashier there. Anna apologizes to Kat for being upset when they first met. She takes hold of Kat's wrist. Elle had them too. What? I try to pull out of her grip, but it's surprisingly strong. I nod to my arm and outstretched hand. The bruise is already a couple of days old and doesn't hurt at all, but it makes me think about the tiny chains of finger bruises all along my forearms. Makes me flush when I remember how I got them. Pushed up against the Smeg fridge freezer, Ross's breath moving hot along the inside of my thigh as he pinned my arms behind me. Don't move, don't move. Let go of me, I say in a voice so cold I'm nearly impressed with myself. Anna tells Kat to leave again. Kat leaves the shop and runs into Marie. Marie confirms that Elle was getting the cards before her disappearance and tells Kat that Elle was afraid. Marie speaks highly of Elle, saying that she would teach people how to paint. Kat tells her that Ross didn't know her, to which Marie replies that Ross threatened her and told her to stay away from Elle. We cut to Kat receiving an email that has clue 6 in it that reads, Elle can still see you. Kat goes to the Princess Tower and finds the self-portrait that Elle painted there, behind which is the next diary page. June 24th, 2005. He's mine if I want him. He's not hers. That's the way it was and the way it is. I know why he did it, but that doesn't help. Every time I think about them together, it feels like a bag of rocks sitting on my chest. I'm angry and I'm scared and I can't stop crying. It's like thinking about Mirrorland and the satisfaction and the clowns and remembering they're gone now. I can't ever go back. But I can fix this. I can make everything go back to how it was before. Cat'll hate me, but I don't care. I'll be glad. Because he can't have her and she won't have him. Kat is startled by the sound of one of the bells downstairs. The bedroom 3 bell pull seems to be swinging. Then movement outside catches her eye and she dips out of the kitchen in time to see a card on the top step, but not in time to see who left it. She reads the card underneath old Fred. It says, "He will kill you too." She thinks back to when Elle went to the hospital to make everything go back to how it was before. I was working when Ross called me on July the 1st. Only my second shift in a bad West End pub called the White Star, and, it turned out, my last. By the time I got to the hospital, much of the initial panic was over. Elle's stomach had been pumped empty of paracetamol, and she'd been sedated and rehydrated. Ross stood alongside her bed, gripping the hand that wasn't bandaged and bloody around a cannula. His hair was wild. The whole of him shook as if he had a chill, even though we both knew by then that she was going to be all right. He'd refused to leave her, to go sit in the grubby dull room on a grubby dull sofa as I had dutifully done. He was hysterical. One of the nurses whispered to me much later on, when the night had arrived and all other visitors had left. She squeezed my hand, pressed the palm of hers against her chest. Oh, to be young and in love again. And it was after he finally left to get some food from the canteen that Elle had opened her eyes and found mine, smiled that smile, so full of joy and hate. I win. Elle left a note for Ross that said she couldn't live without them or without him. He told Kat that he loved them both. She hears the shed door moving in the wind and heads toward it. She finds Elle's kayak inside. Chapter 14. Kat is dreaming about her and Elle running away from the Tooth Fairy. The clowns hide under the bed while the twins hide in the cupboard. The cupboard door rattles, and then everything disappears. The twins are on the beach. Bluebeard has slashed Grandpa's head in half with a hook. Their mom grabs them and tells them to hide from Bluebeard and to run from Blackbeard. Bluebeard chases them. Everything turns dark, and she wakes up. Kat gets the 7th clue in the next email. It reads, "Every bad witch needs a good throne." Kat finds the diary entry in the kitchen, in the spot where the witch would sit when she visited. 4th August 1993 equals 7 plus a wee bit. The witch was here today. Again. Kat and me hate her. She is nasty, she pinches, and sometimes she spits on us. Kat and me are always thinking up ways to kill her, like drowning her in the bath 'cause witches can't stand water, or squishing her like the Wicked Witch of the East. Mouse says she's too scared, but she's always scared. She is useless. Me and Kat aren't scared of a nasty, ugly old witch. March 29th, 1997. 10 years, 9 months, 29 days. The witch was here again. She hates us, and I don't know why. I don't know why she comes if she hates us. She should be called the bitch instead. Witches better watch out, Grandpa says, or they'll cut themselves on their own tongues. Jesus. Cat and Elle would sit with Mouse on the deck of the Satisfaction and talk about all the ways they could kill the witch. Cat recalls a time when the witch was at the house and had taken a locket. Her mother told her, "You always want what I have." The witch replied that sometimes she got it. Cat isn't sure that she could separate reality from fiction and therefore doesn't think she can trust herself. Cat sees a declaration of presumed death from Ross against Elise. She tells him again that Elle isn't dead. "He gets so close to me that I can smell the sourness of his fury, the hot rush of it through gritted teeth. Then why are you fucking her husband?" I was not mentally prepared for the book to be so self-aware about that. Cat thinks back on the emails warning her about him. Marie telling her that Cat was afraid. Vic telling her about Elle being terrified of him. She doesn't believe Elle is sending the cards, that someone else is dropping them off. She wonders why that kayak was in the shed, if maybe Elle didn't have a spare one on the boat. Cat sends Vic a text asking if he and Elle had been having an affair prior to her disappearance. Ross comes home with flowers and wine, which... This is getting ridiculous now. I mean, she's not your wife. Twin or no twin, past or no past. I refuse to believe that these people are in their 30s. She feels sad for him again because he looks sad. Boo. I don't care. I hate Ross. Ross sucks. You know, this isn't... We were on a break. He assures her that he's always loved her, but that Elle threatening suicide in that note made him stay with her while Cat left for America. I close my eyes. The pain in his voice is raw, real. But even though he's telling me what I want to hear, all I've probably ever wanted to hear, there's a part of me that's still appalled by the mostly completed presumption of death form, by how quickly he has transferred his affections from one of us to the other, just like he did then. Whether or not Elle's having an affair with Vic, whether or not she and Ross haven't been getting on for months or years, whether or not thinking any of it makes me the worst kind of hypocrite. Vic texts her and asks her if she would like to meet up. Ross asks if she loves him too, and she says she always has. They kiss and then stay there for minutes. Kat says she has to tell him something, so he goes to get more alcohol to imbibe her with. Kat tells him that the one sending emails is Elle. Elle sent her an email saying she was Mouse, and Ross is dumbfounded by this news. He says that Mouse showed up 6 months prior and was obsessed with Elle. Kat is perplexed because she had thought that Mouse was a part of Mirrorland, not a whole person, but Mouse is a person, a real person. Chapter 15. Kat drinks more vodka after Ross leaves the room. He comes back with a photo album that has a photo of Elle, Kat, and Mouse. She is amazed that she didn't realize that Mouse was even real, that she thought she had fabricated her in her mind. She flips through to see her grandmother and grandfather in a picture together. Then she sees a picture from outside in the front garden. It's her mother and the witch, who Ross posits might be the twins' aunt. She thinks about how she has possibly made herself misremember things on purpose. Ross tells Kat that Mouse had come to the house to try to reconnect with Elle, that Mouse looked a complete mess, that she would show up at the house at random times of day and night after that initial visit. He says that Mouse hated him and wanted Elle all to herself. She showed up one day when Ross was at work with 2 one-way plane tickets to Ibiza. He says that the police investigated whether or not she was the one sending the cards and that stopped Mouse from visiting. Ross says that Mouse always tried to keep him and the twins apart when they were kids. What I remember is that the Mouse I knew wouldn't have said boo to a goose. She was timid and kind, most often submissive, a sponge for all our fears and weaknesses and secrets. A cabin girl, a powder monkey, a skivvy, our favorite piñata. The Mouse I knew refused to fight pirates, refused to take sides, refused to choose punishment. Kat is reflecting on a time in Mirrorland when there was a storm coming in from Cuba. Elle, Kat, Ross, and Mouse were all on the Satisfaction. And then Ross is sprinting along the half-deck towards the stern, putting an arm around Elle and reaching for the wheel with the other, shoving Mouse out of the way, hard enough that she lets go with a scream and is washed down towards the bow. By the time the Satisfaction steadies and starts drifting downwind, the squall has blustered itself mostly out, and I stagger down towards the bow amid pirate cheers and backslaps. Mouse is curled up in a ball behind a lashed-down barrel, her short hair plastered to her skull, ugly sack dress sodden. She looks up at me, her white face streaked with rain or tears. I hate him. Same. And I don't turn around to look at Ross and Elle, but reach down to help Mouse back onto her feet instead, because part of me hates him too. Part of me hates them both. Mouse doesn't let go of my hand. She looks at me, wipes her nose against her sleeve. I wish I was like you. And I believe that the wildness in her eyes, the envy, is for my benefit, because she exists at all only to make me feel better, to remind me that I'm worth something to someone, because she is my friend, my creation. So obviously Cat has something of an ego when it comes to Mouse. Maybe she invented her just to try and have some measure of control over something, anything in her life. Cat thinks back to the nightmare she had about the witch, and it seems that memories are adding to it. The witch is dragging Mouse down the hallway. Mouse sobs louder, reaches her hands out to us. I want to go to Mirrorland, please. I don't want to go. I want to go back to Mirrorland. And we ignore our fear of the witch and run forward, take hold of Mouse's hands as we try to pull her back inside the hallway. The witch stops again, turns and smiles an icy smile, and slaps Mouse hard across the face, once, twice, until we let go. She stabs a long-nailed finger at Mouse's trembled, bowed head, glares at Elle and me, now frozen into silence. Obedience. This is what family is. The look she gives Mum is ugly with hate. This is what it means to be a good daughter. A flood of light, a slamming door, and then darkness. This scene, it gave me goosebumps. Reading over it the second time. It's so well done. It evokes so much sympathy for Mouse. Cat goes to look up her mother's birth records to see if the witch could have been her mother's sister, which would make Mouse her cousin. She sees that it could be 2 weeks to get the information. Then she sends an email to Mouse. She tells Mouse to meet her. Mouse declines, saying she doesn't trust her yet and definitely doesn't trust him. She tells Cat that Ross killed Elle. Chapter 16. The 8th clue comes by email at 12:15 a.m. It reads, Don't dress it up. Everyone is afraid of clown. Cat goes to the dress-up cupboard in the clown cafe and finds the next diary entry. She shakes uncomfortably and her hair stands on end due to what it says. August 10th, 1998. Something's coming. Something's nearly here. Sometimes I'm so scared I forget how to breathe. I forget that I can. Cat goes to bed that night and has a nightmare. Cat and Elle are running while bells clang. They are being chased by deadlights in the dark. They make it to the dress-up cupboard and hide. And when the cupboard door handle starts to rattle, to turn and turn, I want to scream. I need to scream, because it feels like that's the only way to meet the blood and sweat and roar and rage and wrong that wants so badly to get in. I don't know what it is we've done. I don't know why they want to scare us, find us, hurt us. I don't know why they want us to die, to hang us on a hook until we rot. We scream when the door splinters open, when the deadlight and that first terrible face loom into the space they've ripped wide, black bones twisted inside a blue beard, grinning pointed teeth, rum and smoke, a wink and a roar, and the bells only shriek and shriek. What a vivid nightmare. What an amazing description of a nightmare. Then she awakens to the sound of a bell ringing at the front of the house. She hears Ross in the shower, so she goes to the door herself. It's the sexy cop Logan and the family liaison Shauna. They go to the drawing room, and Logan tells Cat and Ross that they should probably sit down. He tells them that Elle's boat, the Redemption, was found, with signs of intentional sinking. They also found a female body in the cabin. Within the hour, D.I. Kate Rafik arrives at the house. She asks how Cat is doing, and Cat replies that it wasn't Elle that they found. D.I. Kate asks if Cat will consent to a DNA sample, which she does. Chapter 17. She thinks back to when she last saw Elle, New Year's Day of 2006. They met on the beach. Elle told her that she needed to eat, that Cat had lost too much weight. At the time, Cat was an anxious wreck who hated being excluded from the two people she loved most in the world. Elle told her that she and Ross were getting married, to which Cat said that Elle only wanted Ross because Cat loved him. Elle said that she was like a fucking puppy who keeps getting kicked around but always comes back. Cat told her that she was going to leave and go to America, and Elle said she hated her and wanted her to go away so she never had to think about her again. There are many downsides to being an identical twin. Always knowing, seeing what you look like when you smile, when you frown, when wrinkles start appearing around your eyes, like a mirror you always carry, sharp and heavy under your arm. Always being mistaken for someone else, just waiting for the moment you can interrupt, put them right, see the warm familiarity in their eyes disappear. Always being crammed into half a box, traits divvied up so that one must be outgoing, the other shy, one adventurous, one timid. Believing in yourself, believing that when you're the one not picked, when you're the one kicked aside, it's never because of what you look like. It's because because you're you and not her. The 9th clue arrives in an email. It simply reads, "Look under your mattress." July 3rd, 1998. He's not real. Dad's not real. I think I knew really, but how could Mum lie? She was making me and Kat pack away our old costumes and games and books into boxes to take downstairs to Mirrorland, and I found one of Grandpa's big encyclopedias in her cupboard. So I took it out and I opened it, and on a page with the corner turned down, there was Captain Henry Morgan! I was excited at first because the picture of him was exactly how Mum had said, exactly like my painting in Mirrorland, and there was all this great stuff about him being a privateer, which I think is just a posh disguise for a pirate that works for the government. Like Mum said too! He was even the Lieutenant Governor of Jamaica! But then Kat saw when he was born, 1635! We couldn't believe it. How could Mom lie to us? She always told us he loved us, and if we waited for him in Mirrorland, he'd come back. He'd take us to the island, to Santa Catalina, and even though that sounds stupid now, Mirrorland is magic. It's better than Narnia or Oz or Neverland or Middle Earth. We can make things happen there that never happen anywhere else. It's real! But it doesn't matter, because she lied. He's not our dad. And when we told her we knew, she cried. Mum never cries. She said she did it to make us happy. And then started going on and on about how she loves us so much, blah, blah, blah. And Grandpa was so mean, like we were stupid to believe it anyway, like it was our fault or something. He said she should have told us that our dad was a total fucking waster who left her as soon as she was pregnant. And when Kat asked Mum if our dad was a total fucking waster, Mum just cried some more and left us with mean Grandpa. I hate them. I hate them both. So this begs the question, who is the twins' father? Kat remembers her grandfather cursing at her mother and telling her to stop feeding the girls so much nonsense. Then she gets a text from Vic that says he needs to speak with her. She sends an email to Mouse asking who the body was that they found, but gets no response. Chapter 18. D.I. Rafik, D.S. Logan, and Shauna come back a day later. Kat ogles Logan when they arrive because I guess she's starting to fancy him some too. The police deliver her and Ross the news that the body they found was Elle's. Kat goes to Mirrorland and grieves without tears. Ross comes in and holds her. She finds she isn't sure if she still wants him to now that Elle is gone, that Ross always belonged to Elle from the very first day. Part 2, Chapter 19. Clue 10 comes in the mail. It reads, Behind the Berlin Wall. I'm in the Clown Cafe. Bluebeard and Blackbeard are here. They'll drag us out of the cupboard and carry us to bedroom 3 and hang us on hooks until we're dead. And as we die, we'll scream in the dark like the sea, like dying pirates on a deck full of blood. And they'll throw our bodies to the sharks. I'm in Mirrorland, sitting cross-legged on the gun deck of the Satisfaction, looking across at Elle. We're wearing matching tartan dresses over starchy white shirt. If it wasn't for Ross balancing on his haunches in between us, it would be like we were both looking into a mirror, like one of us wasn't really there. In his hand is a single sheet of paper covered in red and black pen. The plan. We're in this together, okay? Ross says. The 3 of us. Together. Then she remembers being in the kitchen with Elle, their mom, and their grandpa. This segues us into the diary page's location, the pantry, behind the curtain. It reads, September 4th, 1998. Today at breakfast, everyone pretended everything was normal. Even me, really, I suppose, even though it's not, even though I'm just about as scared as I've ever been in my whole life. And Mom and Grandpa and Kat were all like, pass me the salt and pour me some tea and hurry up, it's time for school. And I'm like, how can you be normal? Didn't you hear? Didn't you see? Aren't you scared? He'll come back. But I didn't say any of that either, so maybe we were all thinking it in our heads and none of us could say it out loud, in case he did. Come back, I mean. So after breakfast, I pulled Kat behind the Berlin Wall and I put my hand over her mouth and I whispered in her ear, it has to be tonight! Because it does, no matter what she says, no matter how scared we all are. It's the plan. It's what we agreed. She has a message from someone, though the audience isn't privy to who it is. She replies, answer me, meet me, explain, or leave me the fuck alone. When she goes to the kitchen that morning, Ross tells her not to shut him out. She replies that she needs to see Elle. In her mind, she just wants to be certain because that nagging feeling that Elle isn't dead hasn't left her. She tells Ross about a previously uncontacted tribe who used to take a person from their tribe who had done something wrong and tell that person all the good things about them over and over until that person believed them. Chapter 20. Marie comes to the door after Ross leaves for the store. She brings flowers and condolences. She also brings another warning. She shows Kat the text from Ross on her phone telling her to stay away from her or you'll regret it. Here's you another red flag, Kat. This is number 10 now. Kat pushes past Marie and shouts that she is going to the morgue. Logan meets her outside of it. Kat has bitten her lip so hard she has caused it to bleed. Logan notes this and goes to touch her face. Excuse me, sir. boundaries. This lady does not need you to touch her face. Rafik calls to him and tells him to go back to the station. He squeezes Kat's hand and tells her to take care, reminding her that she has his number. Inappropriate. Don't squeeze her hand like that. They go inside and Rafik asks if she wants to read the DNA report before going to see the body. When Kat reads it, she is of course distraught, but still insists on going to see Elle. The lead doctor for Elle's post-mortem explains that she did not recommend for any of the family to see the body because it had undergone saponification, which causes the skin to become waxy. Marine life also ate a lot of Elle's face off, which is really gross imagery. It has no hair. Its scalp is completely bald, shiny, creamy, and rippled thick, and the first thing I do think of is a well-used altar candle, its wax melted and remelted into asymmetric waves. Its nose is just a hole, a black maze of sinus passages. It has no eyelids, no eyes. Its teeth are fixed in a lipless grin. Beneath its waxy gray neck and a blue drape, I can just about see the thick black closing stitches of Dr. Macduff's Y incision at the wide end of each collarbone. I try to imagine the body underneath the drape, so still and flat on top of the metal stretcher. I stop. She said that Elle had high levels of diazepam, fluoxetine, and oxycodone in her bone marrow, but it's unclear if that contributed to her death. Kate asks if Kat knows if Elle had a drug problem, but that isn't Kat's belief. Kate says that the drugs probably contributed in some way to Elle's death. Kat refuses to entertain the notion that Elle would kill herself and insists that the suicide attempt when they were younger was just a ploy for attention. Suicide attempts are not ploys for attention. They might be a cry for help, but usually they're intended for someone to leave the earth. So this made me really not like Kat as a character. For thinking that this was just her sister trying to get attention is so insensitive and so just upsetting that she would feel that way over some boy. I don't know, it just made me sad. Rafik tells them that they don't think the cards being left at the house have anything to do with Elle's demise. She says that it seems to have either been an accident or a suicide based on all the evidence. Kat decides she can't talk about the diary pages or what happened on September 4th, 1998. She cries, believing that she has treated Elle very cruelly, that she betrayed her in every way. The DI stays with Kat until she calms down and then offers her some whiskey. Then she asks why they couldn't find any dental records for Elle, nor any school records, parents, or birthplace. She says that before September 5th, 1998, it's like Kat and Elle never existed. Chapter 21. D.I. Kate Rafik has taken Kat to a cafe and continues to ask her questions about her past. She found a report from a Mr. Peter Stewart who found them at the harbor, Granton Harbor, all those years ago when they were 12. I remember Elle screaming and screaming, me banging on the locked bathroom door, feeling the fear, the pain, the helplessness. I remember what it was like to have a mouth full of blood, to be spitting it out for days. I remember the silvery, shivery dread of hearing the squeak of the kitchen cupboard where the bent-nosed pliers lived. Mum was scared of clowns. I try to laugh, but it comes out as a choking cough. She was scared of a lot of things, but she was terrified of them. I think there's a word for that. I've never looked it up, but she had it. So Elle got the idea that if one of us had a toothache, we'd dress up as clowns, so Mum couldn't, do anything. Grandpa bought us the costumes, thought it was just fun. He always said Mum was too afraid of everything, that she'd pass it on to us. I only realize I'm twisting my fingers back and forth when one of them makes a loud crack. We'd paint a clown on the bathroom mirror as a warning, and then dress up and hide in the spare room. We called it the Clown Cafe, and stay there, for days sometimes, till we got too hungry or thirsty or bored, and Mum would never come in. Now it's clear to us who the Tooth Fairy is, or was. Kat believes this was completely normal behavior because it was all that she knew when she was growing up. Their mother and grandfather never took her or Elle to the dentist, the doctor, or school because their births were never registered. Kate asks if they kept the girls prisoner in the house. Kat protests that they didn't, but then she remembers the nails in every window in the house. So, looks like Ross wasn't the one who put them there, like we were previously led to believe. She asks if the girls were ever let outside, to which Kat replies that they played in the back garden all the time. She asks if anyone but her mother and grandfather ever interacted with the girls. Kat knows Kate wants her to say Ross's name, so she does. Kate asks where the girls grew up, but Kat doesn't bite, so the DI continues, telling her that they looked into something that happened the same night the girls were found. There was a distress call from a young male letting them know about an incident at 36 Westrick Road. They found 2 bodies, one male, one female. A murder-suicide, it was reckoned. She looks at me, looks for a response, and I go on trying my hardest not to give it to her. So I wondered about that anonymous caller, that young male. Had Logan run a check on everyone doorstepped or interviewed in relation to the case. And imagine our surprise when whose name should come up but one Ross Macaulay, living right next door at number 38. She stops, softens the sharp voice she probably uses in interrogation rooms. That's what I know, Catriona. So, do you want to tell me what it is that I think? I shake my head. I only want to clear things up, that's all. It was nearly 20 years ago. You were both just kids. Kids who, as far as I can see, had a pretty frightening upbringing. She looks at me as if she expects me to object. Seems like the police did investigate the possibility that you had come from 36 Westrick Road that night. Because in that first report from Granton Harbor, Mr. Peter Stewart insisted that one of the girls had been wearing a jumper covered with blood. Now, P.C. Davidson also reported that Mr. Peter Stewart was drunk as a skunk, and no bloody clothing was ever subsequently found. Nor did a search of number 36 find any evidence that anyone other than the victims, much less 2 children, had been living at the address. So it stayed what it was, the moving mystery of 2 identical twins exhibiting signs of abuse, who appeared from nowhere and belonged to no one. But now a young woman, an identical twin, who lived at the very address of that murder-suicide, has been found dead after living in that very same harbor. So maybe I'm just a wee bit ahead of the curve, because, you know, the first rule of being a detective, apart from the fact that you can no longer be a shit for brains, is that coincidences do happen, but they don't come in multi-packs. So, sounds like Ross was the one who called the police when the girls were fleeing from the home. Either the grandfather killed the mother and then himself, or the mother killed the grandfather and then herself, or maybe they killed each other. Kate asks her if she will tell the names of the 2 people who died in the house that night. She says that she believes that Kat and Elle witnessed what happened, and that was why they ran. Kat says Nancy Finley and Robert Finley, her mother and grandfather, but she thinks of them as the Tooth Fairy and Bluebeard. So now we have confirmation that Grandpa is Bluebeard. Chapter 22. Kat goes back home and thinks about her mother. Then she gets some vodka from the kitchen next to a note from Ross telling her that he'll be back soon and needed some alone time. At the end, he writes that he loves her. I hate him. Kat decides that she can't live in denial anymore and needs to remember her past. She thinks about her grandpa and how he was both the best and worst person she had ever met. She thinks about his gentler moments. But Bluebeard was a tyrant. Bluebeard liked the night and dark rum. He told us that he hung his oldest friend, Irvine, from a hook, just so he could be the one to let him go, to let him drown, for freedom, for money, for a house full of gloom and ghosts. And he hammered long nails into its windows with small, thick panes and hardwood Georgian bars, so that everything in it would always belong only to him. Bluebeard ranted and raved and chased our mother through hallways and rooms with a stovepipe, called us nasty wee bitches, and shook the house with what he wanted to do, what he promised to do. Because Bluebeard loved to hate, loved to be feared, needed always to be everyone's worst fucking nightmare. So, yeah, Grandpa and his alcoholism really messed the women in this house all the way up. On Fridays, Grandpa would go to his room and drink. Their mother would have them run drills and listen for the bells. She would have them correctly identify them each week. She wanted to be sure she could properly warn the girls of Bluebeard's location in the house. He would still find them and beat them some nights. His deadlight would search for them in the dark if that's what he preferred that night, and he would cut the power. Kat hears the front door open and sees Marie leaving the gate. She chases her down and forces her way into Marie's house after her. She demands to know why Marie has been leaving the notes, and she responds that it was to warn both the twins about Ross. Marie tells Kat that Marie isn't actually her name, that she left the Congo behind because she is a formerly battered woman who is helping other women in similar situations try to escape. She says that she had tried to convince Elle to run, but that Elle said she couldn't leave. She tells her that the cards weren't for the twins really, but for Ross. Already a contradiction. Did you leave it for the twins or did you leave it for Ross? But anyway, she says that she was trying to send a message to him that someone knew what sort of man he really is. Kat tells her to leave them alone or she will go to the police. She sees the card and brings it inside. It reads, "Good luck." Chapter 23. Kat is starting to wonder about Ross. Really wonder about him. Whether or not he could or would actually hurt Elle. If he was abusive and controlling, why didn't Elle just leave him? That is the most loaded question that you could ever ask of somebody that's been abused in any capacity. And especially the way that Elle seems to have been getting abused physically as well as mentally or perhaps verbally. We don't have a whole lot of information about it, but we do know that Elle was afraid of him. So she was a domestic violence victim. This reads as very victim blamey. Maybe it's just me, but I wanted to highlight that this is a terrible attitude to have toward people who have gone through any sort of abuse. Why didn't they just leave? I don't think that the author ever intended anything by this, and in fact, if so, it's just to highlight that Kat is herself an abuse victim and probably just wouldn't understand. I pour more vodka because it's Ross himself who's the biggest, reddest flag. Idiot. When I ignore those old familiar stabs of jealousy every time I think about the hot, grief-stricken husband who screamed into the sea, I have to admit to myself that it's pretty hard to reconcile him with the man who's been in my bed for the past week, whispering into my ear, my skin, my heart, how much he wants me, needs me, loves me. Guilt, or even remorse, could probably look a lot like grief. She finally returns to the twins' old bedroom, Ross's room that he shared with Elle. It is the only room that isn't preserved from their past. She starts rifling through his things, trying to find any detail that might help her figure out whether or not Ross could have hurt Elle. She finds paperwork related to the conference he was at when Elle initially disappeared. There's contact info for Professor Catherine Ward, head of pharmacy and pharmacology at Southwark University in London. Kat decides to email the professor from a new email address posing as D.I. Kate Rafik to follow up on Ross's exact movements the night of Elle's disappearance. Then she emails Mouse saying that she knows Elle is dead and asks her again to meet her. Then her phone rings. It's Elle's friend Vic. He's not getting great reception. He tells her that she has to leave the house. He won't explain why, says that he can't, but reiterates that she needs to leave before the call gets dropped. Grandpa was on his knees. He shoved me away hard enough that I banged my head on the deck and saw stars, but I could still see Elle's bulging red face, his hands tied around her neck, the sweat running off his nose. I could still hear Mum screaming, "Leave them alone!" Hoarse now, too, because it was the night after the Clown Cafe in Bluebeard's room. It was the last night of Mirrorland, the last night of our first life. And when I try to yank myself away, to yank myself back, Mum lets out a scream and moves through me like a ghost. She stands behind Grandpa, her good arm raised high over her head. In her hand, the Satisfaction's stern lantern. And when Grandpa turns, looks at her with a wink and a grin. "Put it down, lassie." She doesn't. She brings that lantern down on the crown of his head instead, again and again, until the sound is no longer hard and short and white, but soft and long and copper dark. She is jolted from the memory by Ross calling out to her. He pulls her close and tells her that he went for a good long walk. She has trouble recognizing his red flags again now that he's close to her. She feels very guilty for not sticking by her sister for all those years. They cry together and then they have sex. She doesn't know where else she could go because Ross is the only loved one that she has left. Chapter 24. Kat passes by the shop and Anna, the cashier, calls after her. She hugs her and tells her that she's going to talk to the police about Ross and how Elle was afraid of him. Kat tells her to do what she has to do and continues on her way. She is walking through the city when she receives a text from Ross who asks what she'd like for dinner. Then she gets an email from Mouse. It reads, "You're running out of time. Remember what happened on the 4th of September. Then you'll understand. You'll know what you have to do." She sends one back. "No more riddles, Mouse. This isn't a game. This isn't Mirrorland. Tell me what you know. Meet me. Tell me. Or leave me alone." She's at Granton Harbor. She hears someone behind her and slips and falls down like a dweeb. She gets up and starts assaulting whoever is there. The person tells her to stop. She sees that it's Vic. She asks him how long he's been following her, and he says it's been ever since she got back in Scotland. She wonders how he knew she was back, and it dawns on her. Mouse must have told him. Then he admits that he is Mouse. Well, that he's pretending to be Mouse in the emails. She doesn't believe him, so she demands to see his phone. The email she sent is there, all right. Vic explains that Elle had told him to do this to keep Kat safe. She asks again if they had an affair, and he states that nothing happened, but that he loved her. Elle asked him to follow Kat to be sure she was okay. He says that Elle kept repeating that it was about the end of their first life, and he knows. Why? Vic blinks at me. Why what? Why did he kill her? Because she wanted to leave. She'd planned to leave. Then why didn't she just leave? Why didn't she go to the police? I don't know. I wish she had. Why the hell didn't you go to the police? I did. After she went missing, I phoned them. Told them about her being scared of him. Being scared he was going to do something to her. I told them. No. The police haven't mentioned you, Vic. I only know you exist because apparently you've been following me around for 2 weeks. I didn't give them my name. I didn't want... What? I spread my hands wide across the space between us. To be involved? You don't understand. Elle made me promise not to contact the police at all. She said she was afraid Ross might come after me. I couldn't have given a shit about that, but I was afraid that I'm engaged, and you're engaged. So I guess Vic's also a shitheel. If he loved Elle in a romantic way, which the text implies. He says he doesn't know Mouse, that Elle told him by pretending to be her, Cat would be able to remember what happened. She asks if he's ever been in the house, and he says he hasn't. She asks about the flowers on her mother's grave, and he says that he left them because Elle asked him to. He tells her that he's going to the police about Elle's emails and requests, but Cat asks if there were any more emails he was going to send. He tells her that there was one. It reads, Clue 11, the only place outside Mirrorland where you were ever red instead of white. Chapter 25. Kat goes to the back garden of the house and finds a sheet of paper under an urn and a freezer bag. Then she goes to fix herself some vodka. So there she's starting to pattern herself after her grandfather a little bit in her alcohol consumption. She sees that the envelope inside the bag has Elle's handwriting and it's addressed to Snow White. It isn't a diary page at all, but a letter from Elle. Dear Kat, I'll say it and then it's said. Maybe I should start with I'm sorry, or how are you, or what has your life been like for the past 12 years. But you have to still know me well enough that what's first on my mind is what's last too. So I just have to say it, and then it's said. If you're thinking good riddance, I guess I can't blame you. If you're thinking serves you right, I guess I deserve that too. I hated you once. I don't blame you for hating me back. And if you're thinking liar, then all I have is this letter to convince you I'm telling the truth. It started out as love, or what I thought love was. You know what he was like. You can't have forgotten that. The intensity of it, of him, of how good it could feel when he turned his light onto you. And then all that passion and angst became suffocation, jealousy, control. All men are pirates, remember. Good Prince Charmings don't exist. He made me feel so small. I'd thank him for looking after me. I'd thank him for his scorn and then his rage. The first time he hit me, he cried for a week. The second, less than a day. By the third, I was the one saying sorry to him. I used to wonder what it was he'd seen in me, but now I think I know. He knew what Bluebeard had done to me. He knew I was weaker than you. He knew I would be a goner for him from the start. A few years after we were married, he heard about the auction for the house. Our house. I begged him not to, but he bought it anyway. Anything to lock me up inside this prison again. He had me describe every detail of every room, and everything bought, everything put back in place, made my prison smaller, more secure. You loved Grandpa the most. You loved Mum's stories the most. Your imagination was always better than mine. When you didn't want something to be true, you just pretended it hadn't happened. I think that's why you forgot the end of our first life, and why you never tried to remember it. I used to think it was for the best. I could just tell you, right here, what happened the night Grandpa and Mom died. I could tell you and I could promise that it's the truth, and maybe you'd believe it. Maybe you'd even remember it. But I don't think you would. It doesn't take a psychologist to know that all those unconscious fantasies you've created, embedded, are so much stronger than what they've repressed. And the only way I can think of to destroy all of them is to give you back what was real, piece by piece, clue by clue, until you're forced to remember all of the truth for yourself, because it's the only way you'll remember it. I know you'll be angry about the treasure hunt. I hid the diary pages and wrote the clues. And a friend, a good friend, who I know, after I'm gone, will respect my wishes, is emailing them to you. I'm sorry for the subterfuge. I'm sorry I had him pretend to be Mouse. She turned up to the house last year out of the blue, and instead of being her friend, instead of being happy that she was back, I saw only how mad it would make Ross, how badly he'd take it out on me, because I'm a coward. And maybe it was cowardly to pretend to be Mouse in the emails too, but I thought it would help. I thought you wouldn't listen to me, but you might listen to her. I'm sorry if the emails or my diary have frightened you, but I guess I want you to be frightened. I want you to remember what happened the night Mom and Grandpa died. I want you to remember what Ross did. I've left something for you in the Silver Cross. That and this letter are all I've got left to give you. You have to believe them. You have to believe me. I don't know what he's going to do, but I know it won't look like murder, because he was born to be a pirate. I think about you all the time. Please don't think I don't. When you left, I cried every day, every night for weeks, and he'd hold me and tell me it was okay. It was okay because at least we had each other. It suits him for you and me to be apart. It always has. I wanted to reach out to you so many times, but I didn't, because I knew you were better off without us, because I knew he'd take away what freedoms he'd allowed me to have if I did. I have my painting, some voluntary work, some friends. I have my boat. He agreed to buy it before he realized that this would be my best escape from him. That's why I called it The Redemption. If you've found this, then you must remember how much I loved that story. Any escape is better than none. I can't ask you to trust me because I know you don't. I can't ask you to believe me because I know you won't. I regret every day what I did to us. I should never have given him control. Not in our first life, and certainly never in our second. Remember, he knows. Remember the plan. The Silver Cross. X marks the spot. Remember them and you'll remember the rest. You'll know the truth. You'll know him. You'll believe me. You'll be safe. I'm sorry. All my love, rose red. Kat thinks about how Ross had told her that Elle wanted to come back to the house and turned everything back the way it was when they were kids. She goes up to bedroom 3, Grandpa's room, Bluebeard's room, the one room they were forbidden to enter and the room that inspired the most fear in them. She enters the room. Furniture is covered with sheets, which she starts to uncover. She finds the treasure chest from the Satisfaction. She opens it and pulls out more sheets. There are 2 things in there, a hole saw and a drain plug. It dawns on her that Elle didn't leave these things for Kat to find, that the boat was thought to have been sunk on purpose. She realizes that they are treasure trophies. She goes downstairs. Ross has started a fire and lit a bunch of candles. I hate Ross. Pours them both some sherry because he's a sleaze who's always trying to get her drunk. He tries to comfort her using the same words he once told Elle. It'll be okay. At least we have each other. Chapter 26. Kat is feeling overwhelmed with everything that has happened. Ross tells her that he's planning to sell the house. Stay with me. What? He stares at me so closely, so minutely, I can't even bring myself to blink. Stay with me. Be with me. I know it's not the right time for this either, but I love you, Kat. Not the same way I loved Elle. Different. It's different. Closes his eyes as if he's in pain. Better. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to feel. I know we'll be judged, but, Kat, I'll put up with it if you will. We can stay here until the house is sold, or we can leave, go somewhere, anywhere else. It's up to you. Everything is up to you. I love you. I need you. He lets go of my hands to cup my face, stroke my cheek. His fingers are shaking, his eyes are shining. And Elle loved us both. She'd want us to be happy. Kat begins to feel very disoriented and realizes that Ross must have drugged her wine. Why she chose to drink wine that he brought her just really irks my nerves at her. Like, what? After all of this, you drank the wine that he brought you. And you know by this point that he's a psycho. I mean, why didn't she learn anything about all these traumatizing memories? She's just like, yeah, no, wine would be great. I don't need to pour it myself. She does come to her senses enough to dump the wine out and gulp down as much water as she can so that she can feel more lucid. She looks at all the nails on the windows and thinks that perhaps Ross had added some of his own to the collection of nails as well. No shit. I mean, somebody, they called them the McDonald's, I think. They owned the house in between, so did they just leave the nails from previous? Or, I don't know, just begs the question. Right? She runs to the front door, but it's locked, and she doesn't have the only key to the deadbolt lock. So I told you to put a pin in that, like, way earlier. Well, this is where it becomes relevant again. Where he told her there's only one key to it. I don't know why she didn't, ask to get a copy made of it. She goes to leave through the back garden, but finds that door is locked too. Then she goes to call Rafik back, but has to leave a voicemail. The storm knocks out her cell phone signal before she can say anything beyond, I'm in the house. Painted on the wash house is he knows. She screams when she sees it. The power goes out and then comes back on. Kat? I freeze. My phone is under the table. I lunge for it, scramble to my feet. You okay? Creak, creak, pause. He's at the top of the stairs. Yeah. My voice cracks on the word. Another creak, a longer pause. I'll get the torch just in case we're in for a power cut and then be back down. Creak. Don't go anywhere. He sounds too cheerful. The smile in his voice has teeth. Okay, so it's more like, don't go anywhere. Especially after our argument. Especially after what I said and what he didn't. Especially after my scream. Someone pulls the bell pull in the bathroom. Suddenly she's reliving the last night of her former life. Her mother telling the girls that it has to be tonight, that they have to run. Then she's back in the present, bells ringing throughout the house, alerting her to his presence. Who is ringing them? She isn't even sure the sounds are real. She heads for Mirrorland, knowing that Ross will soon be behind her. Chapter 27. Kat gets to Mirrorland and turns on the light. She looks for the skylight that used to be there and finds that it has been boarded over. She finds a lantern there, knowing it can't be the same one that killed Grandpa, but it still fills her with dread. She heads to the alleyway to find a dead end. Then she remembers Silver Cross. Ross catches up to her as she remembers the pram, which is, again, a baby stroller for those of us Americans, which is Silver Cross by brand. She sees a postcard with a hole small enough to have been from a pen. It has his handwriting on it. Ross is carrying a lantern and asking her what she's doing. She asks him why he cut the power, and he said that he didn't, that everyone's power is out. Then she decides to confront him about his alibi being false. He claims it was because Elle was in a hysterical mindset and he was worried she would commit suicide. He said he lied to the police because he knew suspicion was already centered on him. She asks why he locked all the doors, and he said that reporters were peering in the house earlier that day. He seems incredulous when he asks if she had come there to escape him. She asks if he wrote, "He knows," on the wall that night. She thinks back to when Elle told Ross and Kat that they had to come up with the plan to escape. He says he was a lookout that night. She asks if he could always get into the garden from the roof. She says he always wanted to be their secret, that he wanted to be able to drop into their house whenever he liked. He asks why she wants to talk about that night 20 years before before, but she pushes forward anyway. She says that Grandpa never came back early on a night of drinking, and Ross says that night he did. She asks if Ross told Grandpa about the plan. Then she takes notice of an X drawn in black marker on a brick on the opposite side of the alleyway. X marks the spot. She remembers that this was the painting of Captain Henry Morgan, which had the island behind him that used to be there. That was the way out of the garden before, their means of escape. Their mom had told them to chip away at the hole there to make it large enough for them to make it out, much like Andy Dufresne in Shawshank. They covered it with Elle's painting of Captain Morgan. When the girls got into the hole, it was clear that only one of them would be able to get away, that Grandpa would catch one of them. He did catch Elle and yank her back. When Kat tried to keep going, she couldn't because something was blocking the exit. And then I was hauled back into Mirrorland, my head smashed hard against stone. A curse, a loud and booming laugh. Mum lying prone and unmoving on the ground, a thread of light washing cold silver across her hair and bloody temple. A deadlight, because Bluebeard had finally caught us. What was it? My voice is a dull, flat monotone. A grip box? A garden waste bin? What? I close my eyes. They sting even though they're bone dry. I push against the wall as I stand up, and I make myself look at Ross, keep looking at him. You blocked our escape into your alleyway. You pushed something up against the hole so we couldn't get out. What? His horror is palpable. No, of course I didn't. He moves forward. His gaze locks onto mine. I am on your side, always. I hated that old fucker. I helped you. I'd never hurt you. Did you hurt Elle? No. Did you kill her? He denies this and says that he loves them both, tries to get her to come upstairs so they can talk. She refuses, so he offers to go upstairs and unlock the doors and to bring her a drink. He leaves, and Kat realizes that she feels calm and removed from the situation. She isn't as distressed about the lack of phone service as she thinks she perhaps should be. Then she reads that postcard with Ross's handwriting. Elle, God, thank you, baby. I've missed you so fucking much. You don't know how long I've waited for you to get back in touch. It's been like dying, you know. I don't know if you do. I don't know if you could ever love me half as much as I love you. Your letter was pretty cold, but I understand why. I was just glad to get it. I understand why you didn't want anything to do with me that day outside the National Gallery. I understand how much he fucked you up. You're wrong, but it's not your fault. Meet me, just you and me. No Cat this time. I heard the Rosemount is having a May Day party next week, and I know you're invited. Yeah, I'm your stalker. What can I say? I fucking love you. I hate Ross. Just text me your old room number. I'll meet you there. 2 p.m. Just do this for me. Meet me this once. And if after that you don't want to see me ever again, I'll leave you alone. I promise. Even though it'll break my heart to do it. Please come, baby. Come so I can show you how much I need you. Want you. I love you, Blondie. You know I do. All my love forever and always, Ross. P.S. Don't tell Kat. She'll ruin it. And this makes Kat just giggle hysterically. Chapter 28. Ross comes back and Kat gives him the postcard, then retreats to where she originally stood, away from him. He tells her that he set up a meeting with Elle so that he could tell her how much he loved Kat and needed to be with her instead of with Elle. Then he kisses Kat, tells her that he stayed with Elle because she tried to kill herself, that he felt so guilty that Elle would destroy all of them before allowing Kat to have him. The whole time he's talking, he's also touching her, running his fingers along her skin. Fucking weirdo. When I move away from him, from the relentless stroke of his fingers, he steps between me and the staircase. What are you doing? I'm leaving. No. He folds his arms. I make myself walk toward him. Let me past. He grabs for me, pulls me against him, pushes his cold hands up under my shirt, licks and kisses my neck. Ross, let me past. His hands move around to my bra, his thumbs pressing hard against my nipples, teeth grazing the underside of my jaw just enough to hurt. Let me go. But of course he won't. That's not what he does. I have a sudden sharp memory of Elle and me sitting inside our cells in the shank. Ross, the wing guard, looking in at us through chicken wire mesh. Brown eyes, warm smile. I'll let you out. I'll let both of you out, but only if you promise never to run away, if you promise to stay with me forever. The minute I retreat backwards, he lunges for me again. When I slam my knee up into his crotch, he grunts, eyes widening in shock. He lets go just long enough for me to dodge around him and up onto the first step. His shout is almost a wheezed cough. I feel the heavy topple of him against the stairs, and I start sprinting upwards, my mind and body suddenly, finally, awake. I'm so glad he finally got his balls smashed. He catches her ankle when she's almost up the stairs. He drags her down toward him and she hits her head on the stairs and almost blacks out. After Grandpa dragged us away from the wall, from our escape, he let us go long enough that we tried to run. He caught Elle on the stairs. By the time she stopped screaming, my eyes were blurred with blood and panic. I reached down for her hand and it was gone. Bluebeard's deadlight shone its thin silver thread against the staircase ceiling. I could hear grunts and mutters over a wet, dreadful choking. Ross's sweat is sour. I struggle to get out from under him. Furious tears sting inside my eyes. I can't breathe. I'm here. And her voice isn't an echo. It's as hot and urgent against my ear as Ross's curses against my face. I screamed when I climbed down close enough to the bottom of the stairs to see Grandpa's hands around Elle's neck, her mouth half open, eyes wide white. Our slingshots and war clubs were shut inside the armoire, but I punched him like a cowboy and kicked at him like a Sioux. Screamed at the impotent horror of seeing Elle's bloodshot eyes fix onto mine and knowing Mom was right. I hadn't practiced enough. I wasn't strong enough. I couldn't stop him. I look up, stop struggling against Ross, and go limp when I see that piece of white card fixed to the ceiling with black electrical tape. Snow White said, "We will not leave each other." Rose Red answered, "Never so long as we live." Cat says, "She's here," then asks what Ross is doing. He sees the card on the ceiling. He doesn't know it is their pirate code or that they even had one. She tells him she knows that he blocked their exit that night 20 years ago, that he warned their grandfather. He says no, that he loves her, that she knows he loves her. She confronts the fact that she ran away from the truth because she didn't want to believe that Ross, her Prince Charming, could ever be a terrible person. She could accept the world where her grandfather was a good man and her mother was a bad woman, when the truth about each was the opposite. Elle was already going limp before I remembered the shank in my pocket. I took it out, 2 razor blades parcel taped to half a toothbrush, and it didn't seem like it would be enough until I jammed it into Grandpa's neck and he gave a high female scream. He reared back and pulled it out, and I gave precious seconds away to the horror of waiting for Elle to start breathing again. And then Grandpa was on me, teeth snapping open and shut like he wanted to bite, blood pulsing out of his neck, thick and dark. I pushed him and he slipped an elbow in his own blood, giving me space enough to scramble down the last few steps. Elle was still clutching at her throat, and as we ran back into Mirrorland, I realized that it wasn't her screams that were echoing around the narrow space, deafening and frightening. It was mine. Kat says, "She's here," again. She is upset that Ross drove such a wedge between her and Elle. She tells him to tell her the truth. He does. He confesses that he would have been left by them both if he had let them go. He would have lost them like his dad lost him. He killed himself 5 years after Mom took me away. Hung himself from the ceiling light in my old bedroom. Ross's smile is terrible. His hands shake. There is less than 3 feet of space remaining between us. And I loved you so much. What would have happened to you? No one would look after you like I could. No one. I swallow. I don't know who the you is in his mind. Maybe there, Elle and I were always fused together like sand and limestone. When he comes one last step closer, Elle's musky perfume waters my eyes and her whisper is loud in my ear. Run. I do. We ran east into the wash house, Grandpa thundering behind us. The stone gave way to wood as we ran across the deck of the Satisfaction, the shriek of its boards spiking my terror. He was too close, too close. You're going nowhere, ye wee bitches. I'm sorry. So sorry. I run towards the stern and the barely faded specter of Blackbeard's ship, toward the small red-framed window. I frantically search for something, anything I can use to break it, until I realize that its glass panels are even smaller than those inside the house. You can't leave. Ross, please. I've never told anyone about my dad before, Kat. Not even Elle. Ross, you're scaring me. I won't leave, I promise. Just let's... When he keeps on coming, stepping back is as automatic as breathing. Please don't. I won't hurt you. He looks affronted, wounded, but he still keeps coming. Still the passion in his eyes is wild and dark. But I don't think it's love anymore. Here, after all, is where we first sailed away from him. Left him on his knees in the Caribbean Sea. Left him bloody and sobbing and calling out to us while we pretended not to hear him. Grandpa slammed Elle against the wall above the stern. I howled, launched myself at him, but his elbow thrust backwards into the softness of my belly, winding me enough that I couldn't get up. He grinned until all I could see was teeth, and the blood around his neck like a scarf soaking into his shirt. "Dinna worry, lassie," he laughed. "I'm feeling no pain." And he punched me in the side of my head so hard that my head collapsed. "Ross, no, stop." I cringed from him, batting his hands away, and I've time enough to wonder if this was what it was like for Elle, if this was what happened when she tried to leave him too, until I remember what happened to her instead. "I'm not going to hurt you." He reaches out again, catches my hands, and squeezes them tight inside his, tight enough that my bones crack. "I won't ever hurt you." I wonder if he knows he's nodding his head. I can't stop struggling, but he's too strong and I'm too weak. He holds both of my wrists one-handed. The other he moves up along my shoulder, my collarbone, softly enough to make me shudder. There's another kind of shining madness in his eyes now. A war between taking what he really wants and settling for what he's always had instead. His hand slides up the side of my neck, his fingers tracing the skin under my ear, tighter, then tighter still, his thumb pressing down hard enough against my windpipe that I let out too much air in a gasp, and that madness shines brighter. When I came to, Grandpa was choking stroking Elle again. Her eyes were rolled back, her face was purple, her fingers blindly grasped at the air. I staggered towards them, but it was too hard. I couldn't save her. I wasn't enough. That was it. That was all. I won't hurt you. I won't hurt you, Ross mutters in a horrifyingly reassuring voice, the veins in his neck getting fat with the exertion of choking me tighter. I slide down the wall, rough and cold against my back. I didn't kill her, he says, in that same calm voice, sweat dripping off his nose. I didn't, but he did, just like he's going to kill me. My head feels heavy, full. Elle's liquid gasps are mine. My sight begins to shrink and curl back around its edges. And then Elle grips hold of my hand, hard enough to hurt, to punish. Deadlight, she says, screams. Deadlight! I lurched across the deck, scrabbling for perches as if we really were pitching and rolling against a Caribbean storm. I ignored Grandpa's desperate grunts of exertion, made myself look only at the stern, the lantern, hanging on a rusty hook over the hole. Grandpa turned to see me lift it high up over my head. His frown was startled, then almost tender, a wink, a grin. Put it doon, Lessie. I almost did, and so automatically I hardly registered I was doing it until I saw Mum crawling along the deck toward us, blood running into her eyes. Her hoarse, rasping cries as Grandpa turned dismissively back to the job in hand. Leave them alone! They're your children!
Oh my God!
I opened my eyes. No, tell the fucking truth. Leave them alone! They're your children!
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
So, obviously, we all know why the twins' births were never registered. There was shame around it. There was elements of keeping family prisoner and Jesus Christ, the fucking incest. I mean, this actually did kind of shock me. I didn't anticipate this the first time I read it, and it almost made me give up on the book because it disturbed me so profoundly. And it kind of made me angry, actually, because I thought, well, you're just trying to add these different shocking twists and whatnot. But actually, on my second read, it just evoked pity, it evoked sympathy, and I will admit that sure, it's a plot device, but I think it was a very effective one, and I think it made me feel a lot more empathetic for the twins than I initially did. Yeah, this was definitely the bombshell of the novel. This one hit harder than any other twist that came before or after, because obviously Ross wasn't a twist. Like I predicted, he was an asshat from like pretty much the jump. Ross makes a sound like a sob in the back of his throat, and I feel his fingers loosen around my neck, feel the air rushing back into my lungs. But it doesn't matter. I know he won't stop. One way or another, he won't ever stop. As I scramble backwards, grab onto the lantern hook to pull myself back to my feet, I hear all of the bells at once, high and discordant, low and long, loud enough to tremble eardrums and shake stone. Your children. That horrifying truth of what we were. Not cowboys or Indians or clowns or pirates or prisoners. Our grandfather's children. My fingers shook against the lantern. Its hinges squeaked. I looked down at Elle's lifeless body, the back of Grandpa's head, his hunched and working shoulders. And then I bring the lantern, my deadlight, down on top of Ross's skull, just as hard as I brought it down on Grandpa's, with the same black fury and icy horror, again and again, until all the strength left in me has run out through my fingers, until the sound is no longer hard and short and white, but long, but soft and long and copper dark.
Fatality.
And this made me like Kat finally, because I was like, oh, well, she finally knocked the crap out of Ross, and the protection of her sister and her mom, and the way she repressed the memory by, thinking that her mom did it, but evidently the whole time Kat was the one who bashed Grandpa's skull in too. You could see more of how she could have repressed all that, because Jesus Christ, she was 12 years old and beat her father Grandpa to death, Jesus Christ. This book. On the night of September 4th, 1998, after Kat bashed in Grandpa's skull, the twins' mother told them to go and gather their clothes and books and lock it in the armoire in Mirrorland. She told them she had to cover the door in the cupboard and to be sure that no one ever knew that they were there. She instructed them to close and bolt the door to Mirrorland. They got Grandpa's key, the key to the front door. They asked their mom to come with them, but she told them that she had to sort everything out and couldn't come with them. Then she started to clean them up as best she could. She tells Elle to take her powder compact to cover up the injuries. We stood, stock still and silent, throbbing with pain, the remnants of horror, the beginnings of regret. What are you waiting for? Is Grandpa... I looked at his face, the dark red blood still coughing out of his ruined skull. Is Grandpa our dad? Her lips thinned, eyes narrowed. Only follow the route on the treasure map. Go nowhere else. Only the harbor. Only the warehouse. There's always someone there. You'll be all right. Mum, Elle whispered, was Grandpa... I winced when Mom grabbed for my right hand and Elle's left. You must always hold on to each other's hand, because... We will not leave each other, I said. Never so long as we live, Elle whispered, pushing her cold hand into mine. Rely on no one else. Trust no one else. All you will ever have is each other. We nodded, tried not to swallow, to blink, to cry. Remember, you're the eldest, Elise, the poison taster. Be brave, be bold. Look after your sister. Mum's hands were trembling. The blood at her temple had begun to run freely again. Remember, Catriona, don't be like me. Be brave. Always see the good instead of only the bad. Rafik then informs Ross that he is under arrest and reads him his rights. She tells him that she had a conversation with Dr. Catherine Ward and gives Kat a very pointed look. She says that they believe Ross's statement about his whereabouts when Elle disappeared was false. She lets him know that they are checking CCTV footage to track his location and that they have a warrant to check his phone records. They also found that Ross had been in touch with a local insurance company the day prior about marine insurance, specifically in relation to accidents. The police also have witness testimony that Kat believes was likely Anna and Marie. He knows, I say, as loud as I can, even though it hurts. It hurts more to look at Ross, but I do that too. Because now, surely, even he can see the writing on the wall. Red and stark and bloody. He knows, because he killed her. No. Rafik turns, cocks an eyebrow at me. Do you have any proof of that? The kayak in the shed, and I found a chest inside the bedroom at the end of the corridor upstairs. I swallow before I remember it's a bad idea. The pain is momentarily so bad it eclipses everything else, including the burn of Ross's horrified gaze. I raise my head, look back at him without faltering. I've found your treasure trophies. Kat. Rafik turns me towards her. I think it's a drain plug, I say. Sorrow washes through me, leaving me emptier still, and a hole saw. Ross makes a sound somewhere between a shout and a moan, and I close my eyes as Rafik thunders back up the stairs. What are you doing, Kat? His voice is broken, his hoarse as mine. How can you... Ross, I'd advise you to stop talking. Logan's expression is pained. For your own sake. Kat gives the DIL's letter. Kat tells her that Ross has been drugging her, and she suspects that he had also been drugging Elle. Kate tells her that she will be okay. I know, I whisper, because in Mirrorland, everything is possible. In Mirrorland, you are safe. Fear is to never be feared. Horror is only make-believe. An escape is inside every bone and vein and breath and brick. And all it asks for in return is one thing, only ever one thing, that you have to be brave. And so, for the first time in a long time, I am. Chapter 30. Kat arrives at the prison where Ross will live out the rest of his life. She is reflecting on the trial and the months after. She quit drinking 2 weeks prior to the visit. She has a letter from Elle that she got at her newly rented place in Leith a couple of months after Ross was found guilty of Elle's murder. Vic never read it, but had it sent to her. It read, April 3rd. Dear Kat, this is the last letter I'm going to write to you. I should have written it before now, but I didn't know how, and now I can't put it off any longer. I've lied to you, more times than I can count, more times than I should have. But you need to know that it was for you. Everything I kept from you, every lie I told you, every time I said trust me, this is the truth now, and it never was. Trust me, this is the truth now. She thinks back on the televised conviction. Mr. Ross Ian Macaulay, a jury has found you guilty by majority verdict of the callous murder of your wife, Elise Macaulay. After subjecting her to months, perhaps years, of physical and mental abuse, you decided, and then planned, motivated in part, perhaps, by the realization that she was intending to leave you, to murder her and pass it off as an accident at sea. I find that showed significant premeditation and cold-headedness. I also find that you believed you would profit financially from her death. You pled not guilty. You have shown no remorse. Against these aggravating factors, I find little in the way of mitigation. Therefore, I feel I must pass a sentence of life imprisonment with a punishment part of 15 years for the murder of Elise Macaulay and 3 years for attempting to defeat the ends of justice. God, I'm Snow White. Exposed as I am in this. No one seems to have connected the twins with the murder-suicide at the house as Rafik has suggested, which is good. Ross looks great, according to Kat. He tells her that he doesn't blame her for testifying against him. He says he is sorry for hurting her that night. She was apparently the key witness for putting him away. The part that really helped was the fact that Kat and Ross had been doing the horizontal shuffle. Kat notices him pretending to be human and wonders if he's always done that. She asks him why he drugged the twins. He tells her that he wanted them to stay. He vehemently denies ever killing Elle, asks why he would ever even do such a thing. You did it because one day we might have sailed away from you again, I say, because you couldn't trust us to stay. Better to be sure, better to make us. So you lied and you manipulated and you drugged and you plotted and you divided to rule because you're a coward. I think of the shank. I'll let both of you out, but only if you promise never to run away, if you promise to stay with me forever. Because stealing someone else's air is how you breathe. Stay with me, be with me, I love you, I need you. Elle would want us to be happy. I look at the plastic tabletop, its stains and scratches. You chose Elle because you thought she was weaker than me. I think of her lying in that hospital bed, dark-ringed eyes and a talc-white face, that tired and trembling smile. But I can't. If I think about that, I'll unravel completely. And you're so good at it, Ross. You can make someone believe that your want is their want, their idea, their betrayal. And afterward, when you banish them into exile, you can make them believe that was their fault too. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I haven't heard this voice before. Low, snide, sharp. I wonder if it's the one he was born with. Kat tells him that he is Blackbeard. Her mother had told the twins that they must run from Blackbeard because he is a liar and a stalker, that he'd throw them to the sharks once he caught them. I've made a choice, Ross. I look at him, commit every line and color and shadow of him to memory. Everything on the surface and everything beneath. This is Ross. This is what I'll remember if I ever think of him again. What the fuck are you talking about? I wasn't sure what my choice would be, but now I am. I reach into my pocket, take out the small piece of paper. I allow myself just one more second's hesitation before I put the black spot on the table and push it toward Ross. I choose punishment. He reaches out a hand and then snatches it back. His face is a study in baffled anguish. Kat, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what you mean. He looks down at the black spot. A single tear splashes against the underside of his wrist. I flatly ignore the clench in my belly. I don't know what this means. I stand up, put my palms flat against the tabletop, lean as close as I can bear to. It means give it up, Ross. I can see you. She goes to leave and he's wailing after her, telling her that he didn't kill Elle, that she can't leave him. She does, leaving him hanging on his hook to rot. Awesome. Chapter 31. Elle's full final letter reads, April 3rd. Dear Kat, this is the last letter I'm going to write to you. I should have written it before now, but I didn't know how, and I can't put it off any longer. I've lied to you, more times than I can count. More times than I should have. But you need to know that it was for you. Everything I kept from you, every lie I told you, every time I said, trust me, this is the truth now, and it never was. Trust me, this is the truth now. Here is the why. Do you remember what upset me the most the day we found that encyclopedia entry about Captain Henry Morgan? It was that Mom had lied to us, and for so long, I don't think I ever fully trusted her again. I stopped believing in her. I stopped believing in us, all because of one lie. Do you remember what upset you the most? It wasn't that Mom had lied to us, or even that he wasn't our dad. It was the fact that he liked to torture people by tightening bands around their head until their eyes popped out. Because that wasn't how a pirate king behaved. A father, a hero, a man. And so you instantly forgot it. You withdraw from what you can't bear to be true, and you believe the lie. And when you stop talking to me, when you refused to ever talk about that last horrible night in Mirrorland, I withdrew from you because the truth was all I could see. It felt like a slow-spreading disease, one that I couldn't bear to pass on to you. I didn't want you to remember. But then Ross came back, long before that day outside the National Gallery. For months, he followed me, harassed me, begged me for forgiveness. I hated him. I hated him so much for that night, but he was all that was left of Mirrorland, and he knew it. That day outside the gallery, it was to show me that if he couldn't get to me, he could get to you instead, and that Mayday in the Rosemount was him proving it. So I had to make him believe that he wanted me more. I had to make him think that I needed him more. I faked my suicide attempt. You always knew it, but he didn't. To him, it was the ultimate proof of loyalty. And maybe it was. Because I've tried to tell myself that I did it for you. To protect you from a monster just like you protected me. But I don't think that was the whole truth. Not then, because I still loved him. So maybe our marriage was my punishment, my sentence. I didn't lie to you about that. One day he'd be raging and cruel, the next so loving it was like agony. I'd get these cards, threatening me, telling me to leave. I guess he did it just to mess with my mind. Like the drugs he put in my food and drink. He hides them in his bedside table, and every day I wake up craving them so much I can't think straight. They're chains, just like those freedoms that I told you he's allowed me to have. He succeeded, in the end, in chasing off Mouse after she came back. And when he thought I might be having an affair with my friend Vic, he threatened to find out who he was and kill him. He stopped letting me do any voluntary work. threatened to stop letting me paint if I ever contacted either of them again, to take away my boat. He even papered over the door to Mirrorland, and I let him do all of those things until I wanted to die for real. He found me, of course, made me vomit all the pills back up, made me walk around that fucking house until I could see and hear and cry again. And that was when he told me that he was still in touch with you, that if I ever tried to leave him again, he would do everything to you that he had done to me. And I remembered that encyclopedia entry about Captain Henry Morgan. I knew that you'd try to survive by pretending what was happening wasn't happening, by pretending your prison wasn't a prison and your jailer wasn't a monster, until the day that you died. And so, of all the whys, that's the real one. I'm not noble, I'm not brave. He just finally made a mistake. He gave me no possibility at all of parole. Here's the how. I like to plan, remember? Just like Andy Dufresne. So here's the plan number 2. Phase 1. It was Vic who unwittingly gave me the idea for using the redemption. He works for Lothian Marine Insurance, specializing in accident or negligence claims for recreational vessels. He told me all sorts of stories of deliberate sabotage and how they were discovered. Yesterday evening I visited him at his huge open plan office, and while he was making coffee, I went to an empty desk on the other side of the building to call Ross and beg him to come back from London. I had already made an online query in his name from our home computer requesting a callback. The call should never be traced back to me through Vic because he's just a very small cog in a very big wheel. Lothian Marine Insurance employs thousands of people, and anyway, no one other than Ross even knows we're friends, and he doesn't know Vic's name. I have a second phone, a pay-as-you-go, that I use to talk to friends without Ross knowing, and I've made Vic swear never to go to the police no matter what happens to me. When Elle and I call back Ross for real, he'll hang up before they get to the end of their first sentence. He hates cold calling, so he will have no alibi, and a husband speaking to a marine insurance company the day before his wife is lost at sea is perhaps unlucky, but more likely guilty. I bought a drain plug with cash a few weeks ago, exactly the same as the one I already have. I bought 2 hole saws. I've drilled some holes with the first in the underside of the cuddy that will hopefully go unnoticed because I need that saw to be forensically traced back to the boat. I've left that and the new drain plug in the house, in Bluebeard's room, and my kayak in the shed, where I hope the police will eventually find them. When the time comes, I'll take the original drain plug out, toss it in the Firth. It shouldn't ever be discovered because it takes a while for a boat to sink only from the lack of that. I'll sail to the Deepwater Channel, take down the mast, disable the EPIRB and GPS. The hole saw is more of a risk. The boat will sink fast after I've used it for real, but I'll just have to throw it overboard as far as I can and hope that the redemption drifts far enough that the hole saw is never found. Phase 2. One thing about Ross, he's predictable. A few weeks before I had anything close to resembling even a phase 1, I found the note he left me all those years ago, setting me up to catch you both in the Rosemount. It was in his wallet, of all places. I guess he still likes trophies. Finding it was a gift, because I couldn't be sure that he'd get the blame for my death, that he'd even be suspected of it. I could be sure that you'd come back, that he'd get to you, try to keep you, unless I could get to you first. Both of us have to escape. That's the deal I've made with myself. That's the whole point of plan number 2. For weeks now, I've been acting like the abused wife I am instead of hiding it. It's surprisingly liberating. And it's surprising, too, how comforting it is to know that friends really are friends, that all they want to do is help. By the way, if you've met her, I'm sorry about Anna. She can be loyal to a fault, but if you need her, she'll be on your side. I know how Ross works. I know the what, the why, the when, and how of everything that he'll say and do to you. I've even given Vic a timetable for the email clues I've asked him to send you as mouse. Please believe me, if I could spare you any of this, I would. But there's no other way, and I think you'll work all of it out just like you're supposed to. I think you'll remember. I think you'll stop believing the lie. I think you'll believe me. I think you'll be believed. I think you'll be the one who finds him guilty, and then the world will follow. I think you'd avenge me before you'd ever think of saving yourself. That is my hope. That is my plan. That is what keeps me sane. Because today I'm going to die. I can say that now. I can think it, and most of the fear has gone. Maybe that's because I'm more like Red than Andy now, institutionalized, beyond redemption. But I'm not brave enough to drown. It would look worse for Ross if I did, but every time I think of it, I see that poison taster choking on a black and boiling pearl, and I know I can't do it. I've been stockpiling my antidepressants, and there are the pills in Ross's bedside drawer. I have to hope that they'll be enough. I have to hope that this time the plan is foolproof. This time we both get out and stay out. Maybe you think suicide is a pretty fucked up way to do it. I don't. I might have been faking it last time, but it worked. You escaped. All I want, to paraphrase Stephen King, is for you to get busy living while I get busy dying. Or if that's too flipped for you, maybe this is better. Think of a snowy day in the pantry. Mom sitting on the windowsill and reading Sidney Carton's last words before he was taken down to La Place de la Revolution. It is a far, far better thing that I do than I have ever done. Because it is. It makes me happy, at peace for the first time in years. There's just one thing that doesn't. In doing all this, planning all this, I haven't given you a choice. We've never had many choices. No one ever thought to allow us any. This letter is your choice. It proves what I planned, what I did. You could show it to the police or Ross's lawyer, because even if everything has gone to plan, I know he'll appeal. He'll never give up. Maybe you still don't trust or believe a single word I say, but I hope you've remembered the truth anyway. I hope the house, the clues, the treasure hunt, the diary have worked, have forced you to face what really happened that last night of our first life in a way that I couldn't have by only telling you that the person who was lying to you was you, because I want you to choose what happens next. The black spot is yours. It's up to you what you do with it. Don't think about me, and never think that whatever choice you make is the wrong one. Maybe I'm not so different from Mum after all. She told me once that a white lie was just a lie that hadn't gotten dirty yet, and I guess that's true. I guess I'm pretty dirty now, but that doesn't matter. Nothing matters except this. Once upon a time, you saved my life. Now I'm saving yours. That's it. That's all. Please, don't stop believing in me. All my love, Elle. Chapter 32. Kat takes Elle's ashes to visit their mother at the cemetery. She thinks about how she wasn't worth the sacrifices that either of them had made for her. Kat has a memorial for her and plants a tree in her honor. There's a reception that Vic and Anna stay at the longest. They are joined by Logan and Rafik. She realizes that she has missed Kate Rafik as a person, not as a detective inspector. She goes to the bar and tells Logan that she likes his new haircut. They flirt briefly, and he reminds her that she has his number. Everyone leaves the reception, but Marie waits for Kat outside. Marie asks if she helped Kat, if she saved her. Kat takes her hand and nods to confirm. Kat returns to the house. She is looking for something, but she isn't sure what. She returns to Mirrorland for the final time. She sits there for an unknown amount of time, takes down the picture of the Jolly Roger, and then leaves it and bolts the door shut. Then she returns to the kitchen to examine the birth record she sent off for previously. Her mother and the witch were fraternal twins. Kat takes the Jolly Roger, Elle's letter, and all the birth certificates and throws them into a coal fire in the oven. She resolves when she leaves the house that she is no longer afraid to fly. Chapter 33. Kat is on a plane. She has purchased a seat for Elle's ashes so that she can be a part of flying over the island. The island is Santa Catalina. It's Christmas Day and Kat wants to spend it on the island with Elle. She has to cross a footbridge to get there. When I finally reach the other side, there is a tree of high wooden signs, and my heart lifts when I read the first two, Morgan's Fort, Morgan's Head. I walk across the water's edge toward the only lights. I can hear the sea, see the shadows of boats. The lights coalesce, revealing the hotel in increments, but I'm certain that I've arrived only when I see its small recessed entrance lit up gold. Just before I turn off the walkway, I see another wooden sign, faded and warped with age. Welcome to Santa Catalina, it says. Pirates will be hanged and Protestants will be burned. And I smile again, this time so wide my lips hurt. Leaves Elle in her hotel room and sees some lights on in a bar. It's called the Henry Morgan. The picture on the bar is the same one that Elle painted all those years ago. The waitress hands her a drink menu and Kat has a rum punch. She reflects that she will be able to let go of Elle here. Elle started drinking again, so that's something that's significant to me, but we'll talk about that later. There is a second waitress outside who is spoken to by the waiter who brought Kat her drink. The waitress smiled and it absolutely floors Kat. Floors because she falls. When I start to fall, she doesn't try to catch me. Instead, she runs forward and falls with me, wraps her arms around my back, as our knees smack loudly against the wood. She squeezes me hard enough that I cry out, though I'm crying already, great paralyzing sobs that steal my voice, my sense. She kisses me, strokes my hair, whispers shh to me as if I'm a child, one who has just woken up from a nightmare. I remember how much I used to hate always looking into my own eyes, seeing my own smile, my own frown, my own imperfections. Like a mirror I always carried, sharp and heavy under my arm. To always be a reflection, half of a whole, fused together like sand and limestone into glass. Now my fingers shake as they touch her face, and my eyes blur with tears. I knew you'd come, Elle says. Chapter 34. Kat wakes up in Elle's bed where they slept, holding hands like they did when they were children. Elle tells her that Samuel got some food if she's hungry. She assures Kat that there are more good men than bad. She brings them coffee out on the balcony and they stare at the ocean. Kat asks her why Elle didn't get in touch after Ross was put away, and Elle says it's because she thought that Kat would forgive him. She says that she was supposed to look out for Kat because she is the eldest. The eldest. Elle says that after she intentionally sank the Redemption, she kayaked to a mostly unused harbor. She dumped the kayak in the shed and had and had hidden a survival kit like they did when they were kids. Elle says she had a friend help her get all new documents, and Kat guesses that it was Marie. Elle says that she traveled to Mexico, then Costa Rica, and finally stayed in Santa Catalina. Kat tells Elle to tell her what happened. What changed? Elle takes in a long breath. Mouse. Mouse? You remember how she always was. Needy. Vulnerable. Because of the witch, I say, thinking of her standing in front of the gate onto Westrick Road, tall and cold like a waxwork. Mum's twin. Elle looks at me surprised again, nods. When Mouse came back into my life, when she just turned up to the house about 6 months before the plan, I didn't recognize her at first. She said the witch had just died, and so now she was free to come back. I don't know if she tracked me down to the house or just expected me to be there. You think our childhoods were bad. The witch beat Mouse, starved her, hid her away. Her whole life she made Mouse small until that's all she was. I used to think I knew what that felt like, but until Ross I had no idea. Because you and I, through all of it, through all of the abuse and the isolation, we had each other. We had Mum. We felt love. We were never alone. So I felt guilty. We were pretty shitty to her too, remember? I think of the witch dragging Mouse along the hallway. No, I don't want to go! The hard, echoless clap of those slaps against her face. The witch's smile as we let Mouse go. The way she stood inside that flood of light from the open door, head bowed and trembling like a dog. Ross hated her, Elle says. Hated anyone who might take any part of me away from him. So I let him think that I wanted her gone too. I let him think that she was gone, but I'd still phone her on that second phone. I'd still manage to sneak the odd hour away to meet her while he was at work. And we'd tell each other all about our horrible lives. It didn't help. In the end, nothing helped. In the end, nothing mattered. She closed her eyes, because I'd just had enough. It's then that Kat realizes that the plan was for Elle to kill herself that day, never to escape the country. Elle says that Mouse messed up the whole plan and then goes to get them some rum. Elle had told Mouse that Ross was abusing her, and Mouse resolved that she would go back to the house and find Ross. She said that Mouse had been angry with the twins for a very long time. Elle picked up Mouse at that unused harbor that night and told her all about the plan. Even after I told her I was shaky, panicky, I guess I was still calming down from the adrenaline, cortisol, I don't know, whatever it is your body thinks you need when you're about to kill yourself. She shivers. But I promised her it was over, that I wouldn't do it, that I'd go back to Ross. I talked and talked to her like she was our cabin girl again, our skivvy, our comfort blanket, like she wasn't a person who had suffered, a person who only ever wanted to belong, to be needed, to help. Elle shivers again. I didn't stop, not until I was done, not until I'd taken as much comfort and sympathy as she had to give. And then I left her alone in the cuddy, while I went back up top, kept sailing for a bit longer until I felt ready to go back to the harbor. She closed her eyes. I was relieved. That's the ugly truth of it, of me. I was relieved. I'd tried. I'd failed. And now I could go back home. It was too quiet when I went back down about an hour later. I knew something was wrong. Mouse was lying on her back on the seats, and she was just gray. She was this awful gray, and I just knew. Even before I saw the bag on the floor, the diazepam and the fluoxetine, Ross's fucking pills, my suicide kit. I tried bringing her back, but she was already going cold. She shakes her head, and when she looks at me again, it's with that familiar mix of sorrow and defiance. I saw it then, my chance. I could sail back to Granton, face Ross, all the questions and consequences of Mouse being dead, of me being on the boat when I'd begged him to come back from London, or I could really escape. Him. All of it. Everything I want. I think of that body on the stretcher, the white of its skin, the black of the closing stitches at the ends of its collarbone, its terrible face. Elle's fingers tremble against mine as she swallows hard. I decided to substitute Mouse for me. But I don't understand, I say. It's a lie. I want to get up. I want to run. I don't want to listen. But Elle won't let go of my hands, my wrists. There always had to be a body, she says, and she's actively pushing me down now, as if she knows if she lets up for a moment, I'll escape. If one wasn't found, I knew Ross would never give up. He'd never stop looking, and maybe he'd never be found guilty. It was why I decided I had to kill myself. But as soon as I realized I didn't have to die, I didn't want to. I could go back to the house, replace the drain plug and hole saw in Bluebeard's room with the real ones, so that the forensics would match without any margin of doubt. I could get my survival pack, and I could escape. Really escape. She looks at me, suddenly fierce. But I didn't want it to happen like that. I didn't want her to die. I don't understand, I say again, now twisting my wrists so hard, so frantically, that a bone cracks loud enough to make both of us wince. But Elle doesn't let go. Instead, she only moves closer until we're inches apart, until I have no option but to meet her hard gaze. Yes, you do. And you have to face that this time, Kat. You have to know the truth and believe it. Accept it, even if you don't want to. She lets me go. You have to say it. I breathe in, out. Think of that body on the stretcher again. That DNA isolation test on Rafiq's phone. She's our sister. I stare down at the purple crescent-shaped welts on my skin. Mouse is our identical sister. So this is where I remember getting annoyed with the twists in the book, and I'm still mildly annoyed at it. I mean, I get why that particular twist is put in there, but it just makes me more sad. It makes me more frustrated because it's just too convenient for the plot. And Mouse is such a tragic character. And so why doesn't she get to have a happy ending too? Why didn't she get to live with her sisters? I just feel so bad. I mean, look at Mouse. She was ripped from her mother and grandfather, and she was forced to live with her mother's fraternal twin, who was so abusive to her, dyed her hair, cut it off, barely fed her. The witch would sleepwalk and talk about how no one wanted her or loved her, how she was never picked. After the witch's mother died, Grandpa kicked her out and only let her visit if she was quiet. The witch seems to have taken Mouse because she needed someone to feel the pain that she felt for all those years. Elle says that the witch paid for the headstone and for the burial costs of her sister and father. Kat realizes that the witch was the oldest, that her mother had probably also been lying to herself for years to avoid the pain she had to endure in her life. Elle says that Mouse is the one who told her that she was their sister. Elle didn't believe it until after Mouse was dead. Mouse said all she wanted to do was help Elle. She left a note, she whispers, just her name, the one Mum gave her. Elle's whole body is vibrating like a tuning fork. That's when I knew she'd been telling the truth. What was her name? Elle's laugh sounds broken. Iona. The fairy princess who was stolen from her mother by an evil hag, who cut off her wings and imprisoned her in a tower so high that no one even knew she was there. Elle's sobs get louder, harder. I can hardly make out her words. I left her alone after she told me. She listened to me while I talked and talked at her like she wasn't a person, and I never once listened to her. When I went back up on deck, the last thing I said to her was, "Leave me alone. I want you to leave me alone." Elle, I leaned closer. You didn't know. Yeah, but maybe a lot of this could have been avoided if Elle had just talked to her. Maybe she and Mouse could have escaped together. Maybe she and Iona could have escaped together if she had just listened. And I know there wasn't any way of knowing, and Kat is right about that, but I think my biggest gripe with this whole book is that she didn't get a happy ending too. She was an excuse for Elle to get away instead. Kat tells Elle that it isn't her fault that Mouse, or Iona, died. She remembers that tribe from South America and takes Elle's hands, telling her about every good thing she has ever done or ever been until Elle finally believes her. And then, I cry for Iona. I cry for the sister that neither of us even had the chance to love, to need, to save. I cry for the moment she sat beside me in Chief Red Cloud's teepee, eyes big and blue and full of the best kind of sympathy. It'll be okay, Kat. I love you. I cry for that melted, shiny thing on a metal stretcher, a bald, rippled scalp, deep, eyeless holes, teeth fixed into a lipless grin. And most of all, I cry for Mouse, the little smiling girl with a chalk-white face and ruby-red lips who once told me, if you're quiet and small and scared in the dark, no one will ever see you, because no one ever had. So, as sad as this is, I also can't help but think if the witch hadn't stolen Iona away, then Ross would have tried to have all three of them to himself. But maybe there would have been some counterbalance there. Epilogue. They go to the lagoon and spread Iona's ashes and say goodbye to her. They both tell her that they are sorry. 4 minutes. 4 minutes, and God knows how many generations of pain and lies and suffering have always separated us. But she still knows me better than anyone else in the whole world. Not because we were once almost fused together like sand and limestone. We never were. But because we will always be bound together by something much stronger. Mirrorland was magic. It taught us how to fight, to hide, to dream. It taught us how to escape long before we broke through its wall or its world. I look back out to sea where the sun has begun pushing up over the horizon, turning the sky and sea a bloody and beautiful red. X marks the spot, a rough coastline of rocks and beach, an interior of forest and flatland, a tropical paradise instead of a snowy wonderland, the end of Mirrorland's treasure hunt. And so I turn to look at Elle, reach across the space between us to take her hand. We can buy another redemption, I say, sail the Caribbean together. And at her sob, I close my eyes, remember for the last time the give of the soft, creaking wood as I shifted my weight from left foot to right under the ocean swell, the cool touch of a 20-knot southeasterly against my face, The excited shouts of our crew and the ringing screams of splintering wood and dying men. The bellows of cannons and musketoons. How safe we had always felt, no matter how terrifying the battle, no matter how loud the roar of the squall, no matter who looked back at us from the mirror. We will not leave each other, I think. Never so long as we live. Kat wishes that their mother could know that her children made it to the island, that all three of them were together. Elle tells her she knows, and then their third life begins. And so that's where the book ends. And I very much had, as I've said before, very differing opinions based on both readings. The first one, as I said, really annoyed me. It really irritated me. I didn't appreciate the writing for just how amazing it was. I was just caught up in like plot details, like the story itself. And I guess I wanted something different from the characters. I guess I expected things to go more differently than they did. I didn't anticipate the grandfather being the father whatsoever. That really was the twist that got me, and I hated it at first. And of course, I still do, but it makes for a more compelling story. It shows that the girls had a lot of trauma to process through all of that. I'm still annoyed that Mouse was a triplet. Iona was a triplet. It just feels too plot convenient. It just feels like that extra twist that wasn't really needed. But then I also kind of understand why it was put into. It does, I can grudgingly accept that it neatly explains Elle's death for the DNA, but I just wish that she could have also gotten away. I don't know. It just seemed like she was too much of a plot device, and she really just had the shittiest end of the whole deal with everybody. But then again, she would have been subjected to the grandpa's abuse with the other two, but that would have probably helped them all in some way. Oh God, and the aunt feeling cast aside. What a horrible family. I mean, just can't even imagine, growing up in something like this. So I love the way that Carole Johnstone's able to set a scene. It's on my first initial reading, after reading it, that dark and devious, beautifully written and plotted with a watchmaker's precision. I know that that's not focusing well, but hopefully my point came across with that. But yeah, she really did craft it with a watchmaker's precision. So I feel so many mixed emotions about this book. I can clearly picture 36 Westrick Road in my mind so vividly. It's incredible. The made-up characters in Mirrorland, they were small parts of the story, but they were integral enough, they felt real enough, for a child's imagination to have brought them up, and therefore, they had enough of an impact to still be significant, and that's not a mean feat. There wasn't a lot of subtlety to Ross, but I'm not sure if that was what Carole intended or not. It was pretty obvious early on that he was going to be bad news. First read, I was like, oh no, I don't like that guy. And I predicted that he and Kat were gonna, put the moves on each other, which is gross. And without context, it was like, oh God, no, that's where this is going. Oh God, no. And I still hate it in context, because even if incest, in this case, just borderline, even if it's been normalized for them because they're literally byproducts of it, I still hate it. It's incest. It's On the one hand, I know that memory can be a tricky thing, and I understand that survivors will sometimes bury memories to stop from experiencing trauma on their behalf, but I'm not sure I can actually suspend my belief. But I'm not sure I can suspend my disbelief enough to believe that this could have actually happened. It's a well-crafted story, sure, but could someone suppress so much for so long? Maybe I'm wrong, and if so, then I'm happy to admit it. I mean, after all, I'm not a psychologist like Ross. I liked it that Kat seemed to have quit drinking because of how destructive it had been to her life, perhaps as a parallel to her father-grandfather, but nope. She starts drinking again at the end. Elle's still drinking, so, I'm just not sure that her sobriety was explored as thoroughly as it could have been. Maybe it could have been a cathartic thing for her to work through. Not saying that, that makes the book unreadable or anything like that. I just think it could have added a little something else. But to be fair, this is Carole Johnstone's debut novel, and wow, like I said before, I hated the book. Now I have such respect for it. Actually found that I kind of liked it. It challenged a lot of previous attitudes, just being like, oh, God, of course the granddad was the dad, or you know, oh, so there was actually a third sister, and yeah, it turns out, you know, that Elle wasn't dead all along, just like Kat said, you know. I was very snarky about it at first, and now I've really come to appreciate it, and I can't believe that I ever recoiled from it, that I was ever horrified by the good reviews that it had. I just thought, oh, the world has lost its mind, you know. Everybody doesn't, you know, nobody knows how to read anymore. And, but no, it does unfurl slowly. It does build suspense. And it turns out, you know, you can see on the second read, like, where the clues were. Like, how it was kind of obvious right there in front of you what was going to happen and who the granddad was. But it was done in such a way that I was still shocked. And so that, to me, is masterful and precise. It's definitely not my favorite book by any means. I mean, it does have its flaws, like Ross being so predictable. Too many twists, but I will say it's a really good read. I mean, it's you'll fly through it upon your first read because you'll just want to know, you know, what's happening. So it made me think, you know, that sometimes a book might be worth a second look, unless it's Heartbones. So anyways, thanks again for joining me today. Again, I'm so sorry that it took this long to put out any more content. I just want to make sure that I put out something that I'm proud of. If I don't like it, I don't think that it's worth sharing. If I don't like it, I don't expect that anyone else would like it. So I can't promise a regular upload schedule because I only do this part-time. I do have a full-time job. You know, but I do love working on these videos. I can safely say that I'm going to keep uploading, so I hope that you stay tuned. I'm sure that, you know, I'll just get better with time and hopefully more consistent, you know, if things go well. So, but the next one is a video game review. I am working on it right now. It'll mostly be voiceover, so hopefully it won't take as long to record. And I also do have another book review planned. That book, the book that I'm thinking about doing, is actually one of my favorites. So stay tuned for that as well. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share if you'd like to. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.